to a song written by Aurelio Martinez, who sang with the band and died in an air crash just over a year ago. Sung in tribute to him, it's called Yalifu, pelican. You see dozens of these birds along the Belize coast. The song says, "Please lend me your wings so I can go and see my dad, who's working in the United States." It's a personal song written about Aurelio's own dad, but of course it has a larger meaning for the Garifuna. Many of them have emigrated to the US for work. They also performed Watina, probably their most famous song, written by Andy Palacio, who first brought the collective together, but died of a stroke aged just 47. Watina means "I called out," and it's a call for an awareness of Garifuna culture, saying, "We're here, we exist." Most of the people in the bar weren't Garifuna, but they were all singing along to the songs in Garifuna, a completely different language to the Belizean Creole or English they'd speak at home. Although the Garifuna represent only about 5% of Belize's population, their larger cultural influence is widely celebrated. In Dangriga, where the Garifuna first arrived, there are Garifuna drumming groups playing a couple of nights a week, and something of an industry in workshops to learn the distinctive drumming styles. They use a pair of drums, one smaller, the primero, the other larger, the segunda. Denmark Flores, one of the collective's drummers, demonstrates the interplay between the two for me. The primero is masculine and plays more complex rhythms, improvising and directing the dancers, while the segunda, feminine, plays a steady rhythm. It's not as flashy, but I think it's more important than the primero, Denmark says. The woman is the one who makes sure the house functions, raises the kids, and is the heartbeat of the family. Listening to this drumming by the ocean that brought them here, it's easy to hear the enduring pride in this music, that of a culture with a heartbeat that was never enslaved in the New World.
Simon Broughton, on a musical tradition and a band that's well worth a listen. And that's all for this edition of the programme. Thank you for joining me. I'm Pascal Harter. The producer was Polly Hope. And we'll be back next weekend with more stories of the lives behind the global headlines here on the BBC World Service.
That was the BBC programme.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Good to be back with you here on Information Radio on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app and on YouTube. We're live downtown from our Studio 15 with our team, and we're here with your morning show until 8:37 AM. Thanks for joining us wherever you're listening from in Northwestern Ontario or all across Manitoba. Let's talk to the team. Speaking of which, there's Abby Adeyemi behind the controls, our senior tech on the show. Abby covers the forecast. Also, there's Darren Marash, who produces our YouTube stream. Say hi to Darren if you're watching the show stream live. And then Corey Funk is also here with us, who is directing the program, and Corey covers your commute. Well, I mentioned weather, mix of sun and cloud today in Winnipeg. Chance of showers early this morning, 30%, and a risk of a thunderstorm. It's going to be windy around your lunch hour at a high of 21. Brandon, very similar, though your high is 20, but same with the wind and chance of showers for you. And then up in Thompson today, expecting a 60% chance of morning showers and a high of 12. Heather Wells is also in with us on the team. It's 2 minutes to 6 and she has your news headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, many farmers in the Interlake and Swan Valley regions of Manitoba are facing an uncertain summer. Fields are flooded, buildings and equipment damaged, and some herds are still isolated after last week's flash floods. We're going to get an update from the Manitoba beef producers. And a former Winnipeg Jet helped lift the Carolina Hurricanes to the Stanley Cup win last night. Nikolai Ehlers, with just a minute left in the third period on Sportsnet, shooting into an empty net. Carolina blanks Vegas 3-0, winning the series in 6 games. And after the game, Ehlers got a little bit choked up as he talked about Winnipeg. We'll hear that in our next local news coming up at 6:30.
All right, looking forward to it. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
In the program today, of course, the aftermath of the storms last week. And we will be talking to Reeves and leaders from 3 different areas of Manitoba hardest hit, just to find out exactly where people are at starting this week. Who could have imagined thinking just a week ago what came through. So stay tuned. We're going to hear more about that. Also, in the first hour of the show, the G7 Leaders Summit kicks off in France today. U.S. President Donald Trump will be in attendance. We're going to hear what's at stake for Canada a little bit later in the show. And to tee all of that up, let's go to World Report. It's 1 minute to 6 o'clock for your national and international.
Today on Q. Imagine it's the 1880s. You're sneaking into an insane asylum and you realize a lot of people there aren't insane at all. That's what the journalist Nellie Bly did. The Canadian playwright Hannah Moscovich will tell you why Nellie Bly did that and why it's the perfect story for an opera.
Like where you can really get into someone's mind.
Q with Tom Power. This morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland. And on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. We start with the news of a possible Iran-U.S. peace deal. The framework sets out a way forward to end their war and the global energy crisis. Details are sparse and do not go much beyond the broad brushstrokes, but the CBC's Katie Nicholson is in Washington with more. And Katie, just what do we know about the deal?
So unverified details have been leaking out about what this covers, both from the Iranian and U.S. officials. But both sides seem to agree that this memorandum of understanding spells out the immediate cessation of military engagement, the end of the U.S. naval blockade of Iranian ports, and when signed, the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. president insisting last night the strait would reopen toll-free. But Pakistan, when it announced this deal being struck last night, was clear there was a week of technical talks ahead before this is supposed to be signed on Friday in Switzerland. And as we have seen, agreements made during this conflict are complicated and fragile. And it appears some of the more thorny issues, like the future of Iran's nuclear program and the lifting of Iranian sanctions and access to frozen funds, will be kicked down the road a little as this agreement creates a 60-day negotiation period for those and other contentious issues. And Trump has told the New York Times if they fail to make a deal on the nuclear issue, he would resume military action. So a lot of uncertainty really still lingering today.
Part of this hinges presumably on Israel and Hezbollah. What do we know about what they're saying?
Well, Israel was reportedly caught off guard by some of this last night. It says it's not going to be pulling its troops from Lebanon. Its national security minister, who leans to the far right, has insisted the agreement doesn't require Israel to cease hostilities with Hezbollah in Lebanon. And we know that has been a red line for Iran from the very early days of this war and the negotiation of the first ceasefire agreement. So Israel and Hezbollah have essentially ignored the U.S. president's demands in the past that they stop firing on each other just throughout this conflict. And any provocations on either side could further threaten to topple this deal before it gets signed on Friday.
Thanks, Katie.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Katie Nicholson in Washington. In a Canadian exclusive, CBC News is reporting from Iran with permission of the government. Iran imposes restrictions on international journalists. However, they do not check our material before it's published or broadcast. The CBC's international correspondent, Margaret Evans, is in Tehran. She has more on what she's hearing on the ground.
The agreement was announced in the early hours of the morning here by Iranian state television and has since been confirmed by what's called the Supreme National Security Council. They've used language emphasizing what they call Iran completing its victory over the United States, very specifically saying that it brings an end to the war on all fronts, including Lebanon. The reason that language is important is that the Iranian leadership, you could say, is divided between hardline and more hardline factions. And the more hardline factions, members of it, have been very opposed to even negotiating with the United States. And there have been demonstrations on the street here against the foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, and Mohammed Bakr Ghalibaf, the chief negotiator of this agreement. They've been called traitors by the public. In terms of ordinary people on the street, there are going to be many people who are very relieved to hear there is what may be called an official end to the war. We met people in the Grand Bazaar here yesterday who talked about the changes they've had to make, even in terms of their diet, not being able to afford to buy meat anymore. But there is also a lot of skepticism. There are many people who don't believe that the deal will hold, in part because of the Israeli Prime Minister's comment saying that Israel is not a part of this agreement and will not be withdrawing from Lebanon. And young people in particular seem quite dejected about the prospects for real change, especially after those huge uprisings before the war against the government demanding change were put down so violently by security forces. Margaret Evans, CBC News, Tehran.
Overseas, markets soared at the news of a framework agreement. European and Asian stocks opened higher today, and oil prices fell more than $4 a barrel. The cost of Brent crude fell to just over $83 a barrel. Analysts tie the optimism to a potential reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. The waterway is crucial for energy supplies to Asian markets. However, experts caution it may be months before prices stabilize. Prime Minister Mark Carney is on his way to the G7 in France. He has expressed his support for a ceasefire and offered to help. The CBC's Kate McKenna is traveling with the Prime Minister and has more on what he's saying.
We take the situation where we are today and look forward from that.
Prime Minister Mark Carney, speaking hours before the deal was announced, says the focus going forward must be peace.
The moral choice is to do everything we can to establish a ceasefire and build that into a durable ceasefire and ultimately peace in the region, including Lebanon.
In a joint statement issued with Germany, France, Italy, and the UK, Canada said it's vital the detailed negotiations are concluded rapidly and comprehensively. It also called for the urgent reopening of the Strait of Hormuz with unconditional and unrestricted freedom to navigate. The countries committed to playing their part in achieving this, while also committing to working with the U.S. to make sure Iran never gets nuclear weapons, saying they're prepared to lift relevant sanctions in response to steps by Iran on its nuclear program. Carney is now en route to Evian-les-Bains, France, for the G7. Sources say he hopes to have a bilateral meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump while he's there, though at this point it's not clear whether that will happen. Kate McKenna, CBC News, County Mayo, Ireland.
Britain's Prime Minister plans to ban social media for children under the age of 16.
Some technology companies want us to think that social media is unchangeable, part of an almost natural order. But we have to resist that kind of learned helplessness. We have agency. We can change it, and we will.
Keir Starmer did not say which apps would be targeted, but he says his government will also put restrictions on gaming and live streaming platforms. The ban will take effect early next year. The UK is the latest country to restrict access to social media for children and teens. Canada announced its measures last week. The Carney government is about to rise for the summer, but not before introducing two bills. The Liberals have given notice they will bring forward a long-promised update to Canada's privacy laws. It is expected to include protections for children's data. Another bill will address clean drinking water on First Nations across the country. Previous legislation was introduced in 2023 before the last federal election was called. Canada has brought in its first batch of electric vehicles from China. They're part of a recent trade deal between the two nations. And as Lisa Xing explains, Beijing may be looking to expand the market even further to solve production problems at home.
There's just so much competition within China.
Ilaria Mazzucco is with the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington, D.C. She says domestic EV sales in China are stagnating. The intense competition is driving down automakers' profit margins, consumer demand is slowing, and government subsidies and trade-in incentives are shrinking.
They need to have that growth market, and the only way to find that rapid growth market is to go abroad.
While domestic sales declined by about 25% in the first quarter of 2026 compared with the same period last year, export data shows there has been a major increase in Chinese EVs going to countries around the world. Sales doubled in Europe and jumped by 130% in Southeast Asia.
There's no way stopping the development.
Auto analyst Lei Xing spent 20 years covering the Chinese car industry in Beijing and says that industry has matured, and exports are now the next logical business step.
More profitable business, there's more demand. The credibility of Chinese products, EVs, are there.
There are now more than 2,900 Chinese-made EVs in Canada, the majority of which are reportedly Teslas produced in Shanghai. More Chinese-branded autos will come too, as governments like Canada's are grappling with protecting domestic car industries and accepting an era of Chinese EV dominance. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Toronto.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. If you are enjoying the World Report podcast, please follow us and tell a friend. It helps spread the word. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. Great to be back with you hosting the show. And a big thanks to everybody who was filling in last week on the stormiest week in Manitoba. I sure picked a time to leave, huh? Thanks for joining us. You're on a CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app and on YouTube. This hour on the show, we're going to find out why a Winnipeg church is inviting hundreds of married couples to renew their vows in a massive ceremony, so stay tuned for that. It's a nice story. Also, we will get more on what you've just likely heard on World Report about the peace deal between the U.S. and Iran that was announced last night, so we'll dig into that a little bit this hour. As well, this hour on the show, we will check in on the G7 Leaders Summit in France kicking off today. U.S. President Donald Trump will be there. Stay tuned. What will that mean and what's at stake for Canada? So it's all coming up. All right, let's go to Heather Wells now and find out what's making news in Manitoba this morning. Hi, Heather.
Good morning. Well, Manitoba is going to have electronic patient records shared between hospitals by next spring. That means hospitals will store digital records of your diagnoses, your treatment notes, and other updates instead of having them on paper. Some hospitals are already using this system. We're going to hear from one from the Asheron Hospital and how he sees the system working. That's coming up. As well, anxiety among many Manitoba farmers worried about their crops and animals as fields remain flooded. Last week's storm bringing that torrential rain and flash floods. More on that story as well in our next local news coming up at 6:30.
Heather, I couldn't believe it. I had left on Wednesday, and of course the Minnetonka story was just developing, and our reporters were trying to get there, and we were sending drones to get footage. And then that day, and the way it developed in the next day, just incredible. And it was so, historic. I know all of you have talked about this on the air already, but I have never, ever in my life in this province, as I'm sure so many shared, seen all of those storms at once. Just the incredible cloud cover, the incredible amount of rain everywhere all at once. There's a movie called, I think, Everything Everywhere All at Once or something. That's what it was. It was just unbelievable. So many people cleaning up, as you said.
Yeah, and it's not something that's going to end right away. This is going to be something that impacts the entire year for a lot of these producers, for sure.
Yeah, and I remember from flooding damage before doing so many stories with, there was a couple I visited in their hotel room. They lived there for months and months and months. They were in Transcona, and I remember they were showing me the forms to fill out the insurance forms, and it's complicated. Yeah. So lots to cover going ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Heather's next news, as we heard, 6:30 online anytime at 89.3 FM here, of course, on air anytime, and then online at cbc.ca/Manitoba. Hello, Abby, Addie, Emmy, and Corey Funk. How are you guys doing? Corey, I heard you hit the basement in Stonewall last week.
Yes.
Helping somebody scoop out the water.
Yeah, I was down there. It was wild to see.
It's going to be a long time, as Heather said, to clean up.
Yes, very long time.
Did you walk in or bike in this morning?
Biked in this morning. It was it was very quiet bike ride in, very dry bike ride in, which is nice to see. But if you want a traffic hit while I'm here, it's been pretty quiet overall. But I will remind folks, because of that flooding, still number 10 between Swan River and Minnetonka still closed due to the flooding in that area, the washouts. And there may still be some localized parts of roads in the Interlake there, potentially Highway 9, according to 511. So just keep an eye out if you are going to be heading to the Interlake. Highway 8 tends to be your best bet right now. But if you do see something else going on, if you're walking your bike and you're driving, you can give me a call. That number, 204-788-3093.
All right, let's get into the actual weather forecast with Abby Adiemi. Morning, Abby.
Yeah, good morning, Marcy. Good to have you back. Across the province, we're seeing cloud cover. However, for the southern part of the province, we should be making a transition to a mix of sun and clouds later. While for the north, a bit of rain coming your way. For the city, 15 degrees at this time. We expecting some kind of windy afternoon to come our way before we get to that high of 21 later. While in the southern part, we got a mild start across the regions from the Westman all the way to the Parkland region. We're looking at temperatures between 8 and 13 right now, and highs will be in the 20s. But up north, a bit of cooler conditions. We're seeing 3 degrees in some areas, and we'll get to 18 in the Pa and Flin Flon area later. So overall, variable. Some rain might come to the north later. There's a slim chance of showers also for Winnipeg later. But for now, we're going to see a windy mix of sun and clouds, a high of 21. Current temperature is 15 degrees.
Well, 'tis the season for graduations and for weddings. Maybe you're getting married, in a wedding, attending a wedding. The All Saints Anglican Church in Winnipeg is actually looking for people who are already married. They're looking for couples to help them celebrate 100 years of weddings. So next Saturday, June 20th, this upcoming Saturday, they're hosting a mass vow renewal ceremony at the church at the corner of Osborne and Broadway. So whether you were married, to be clear here, at All Saints or somewhere else, you're invited to come to the church and renew your wedding vows. Joy Peters is the church's administrator. She spoke to Weekend Morning Show host Nadia Kidwai about how she got this idea.
So I've been working at All Saints for about 5 years, and I found over the past 5 years when I tell people where I work, a lot of people say, "Oh, I was married there," or "I know someone who's married there, my cousin, my child." So when we were sort of thinking of ideas to celebrate the centennial of our church building, the congregation is actually 143 years old, but our church building is 100 years this year. We thought about all of the people who have gotten married there over the past 100 years, and we thought we should do something to celebrate that.
And do you have a sense of how many people have got married at that church?
We know it's definitely over 2,000 couples. By my count, probably about 2,300 couples, which is 4,600 people. Yeah. Which is a lot.
How's the ceremony going to work next week?
So we're having an open house from 1 to 4, but the mass renewal of vows starts at 2:00. And everybody is welcome to come, find a seat, sit next to your partner. And it's going to be officiated by our priest, Father Rob Scheck, and his wife, who is also a priest, Reverend Lauren Scheck. She's at the parish of St. Michael and All Angels, which is, yes, that is absolutely adorable. They are a married couple who are going to officiate together. So they will sort of lead everybody in renewing their vows as well. Everybody renews their vows. You'll just sort of turn to your partner where you're sitting and sort of say along with them. The service is going to be basically like a wedding service, the traditional wedding service that we have, except instead of one couple getting married, everyone can renew their vows. Our choir is going to sing a few pieces. The organ is going to play. It's going to be really beautiful.
So what time is that, the actual renewal of the vow ceremony?
That starts at 2:00.
Okay. Should people come in wedding attire? Like, what's the dress code for this renewal?
We're hoping people will dress up. There's no dress code. You can come whatever you're comfortable in. But, we're staging it as quite a formal event. We're hoping that people will dress up. If you were married recently and you want to come in your wedding dress, that would be wonderful. If you can still fit in your wedding dress, of course. And we know for a lot of guys, they rented their suits, so that makes it harder to wear. But yeah, we're hoping that people can dress up, and there is going to be an opportunity to have photos taken afterwards. So it's nice to be dressed up for that.
May I get personal joy?
Yeah.
Are you married? Will you be participating in the vow renewal ceremony?
I am married. I didn't get married at All Saints, which I am sad about now.
Yeah.
But
Well, now's your chance.
Now's my chance, absolutely. So yeah, my husband will be there with me, as well as our two kids. My kids are very excited. They get new fancy clothes to wear.
So are you going to do the vow renewal?
And we're going to do the vow renewal. Yeah,
I love that. Any sense of like the feedback to this idea from your congregation and beyond?
Oh, people are very excited. We've got a lot of people who have donated either their photos and wedding dresses. So we're going to have quite a few displays as well. That's what the open house is. We currently have 5 wedding dresses and a suit set up on mannequins. The oldest one is from 1942. And we have several more that are yet to be dropped off that we're going to be setting up, as well as displays of photos. Including photos going back all the way to 1927.
So the open house is from 1 to 4,
yes,
open to everyone, and the vow renewal ceremony starts at 2.
Yes.
And just to clarify, you didn't have to necessarily get married at All Saints to attend to that vow renewal.
Yeah.
This must be crazy wedding season. Anyway, you handle all the wedding bookings at the church, volunteered at many ceremonies. What do you most love about weddings at All Saints?
Well, All Saints is it's what you expect from a traditional church wedding. It's very well suited. We have one single aisle that goes down the center, a big door at the end of that so the bride can come through, and then the couple get married under the rood screen, which is sort of an arch at the front. So it's very traditional. It's a beautiful space, and if you have the organ playing, it's very traditional.
Do most of the weddings that happen at All Saints, are they members of the congregation or do you have members from outside?
So we're actually one of the few churches that allows rental weddings.
Okay.
So basically anybody can rent the space. You can even bring in your own officiant or marriage commissioner. So we've had marriages of sort of weddings of all kinds. A really fun one that we had in the past couple of years was there was a surprise mariachi band for the recessional. That was a lot of fun for us as volunteers because we had to sneak them in.
What was the reaction? Like, at what point did the mariachi band appear, if it was a surprise?
Sort of after the first kiss, when everybody claps and the couple comes down the aisle, and then the mariachi band came out, and it was so much fun.
You've been there for 5 years.
Yeah.
Have you noticed any trends? Like, it's interesting. We are living in an increasingly secular world. Are weddings in churches, like the church ceremonies, still as popular in the 5 years that you've been there? Have you noticed an increase and a decline in ceremonies, wedding ceremonies?
Yeah, I'd say it's staying steady. We had obviously during COVID that really messed up a lot of weddings, and things slow down, but they're increasing.
Really?
There's a lot of people who do want weddings. We also find that we have a lot of couples who have a home church elsewhere, but their home church is maybe not as pretty as ours, or not as convenient for their reception. Like we have a lot of couples who are having receptions at the Fort Garry, places that are close to us.
Yes.
And maybe their home church is outside the city, things like that. So it's a convenient local spot for them to get married.
Yes, very central. Just across from the ledge. There's a lot of
a
great
lot of photos at the ledge,
yeah, I'm sure. Like the people who want to get married at a church, are they necessarily religious, or do you think it's just more kind of like this traditional tie or connection that we have to church weddings?
I find it's about half and half.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of couples that I get the feeling that it's their parents or their grandparents who are pushing for the church wedding, or they just, it's a convenient location to have the ceremony. But then we also have some couples who are obviously very religious and are just looking for, a church that they can have their religious wedding in.
That's Joy Peters, the administrator at All Saints Anglican Church in Winnipeg. So the 100 Years of Wedding celebration, if you want to go, is happening next Saturday. So June 20th, this upcoming Saturday. They're at 521 Broadway. It goes from 1 o'clock until 4 o'clock. The Mass Vow Renewal Ceremony, as you might have caught in that interview, does begin at 2 p.m. So go with your partner and you can be in a pew, sit beside them, and have your vows renewed.
On the topics that matter, your voice should be heard.
It looks like this is maybe a one-day blip when farmers across the province need hot and dry.
Radio Noon is where you can voice your take.
In general, it's harder to find a job even if you're educated.
From 12:15 to 1 p.m., Radio Noon opens the phone lines on one important topic.
When I was 5 or 6, my parents gave me seeds and helped me plant them. That was probably close to 70 years ago. And here I am still gardening.
It just brings everyone together. Radio Noon's call-in segment, 204-780-0893. We want to hear from you weekdays on CBC.
And remember, Radio Noon's call-in will also be following what is happening in the news as well. So last Wednesday, opening up the phone lines to try to make sure we had the latest on that emerging situation with the storms as they were developing and the needs in community. So check it out between 12:15 and 1 o'clock every day, the live call-in on Radio Noon. You're on CBC. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Great to be back with you. Thanks to Julie Buckingham for filling in last week hosting the show. This is Information Radio on 89.3 FM, and it's mostly cloudy in Winnipeg this morning and 15 degrees, 9 partly cloudy in Brandon, and Thompson's mostly cloudy and 8. We're expecting in Winnipeg mix of sun and cloud, 30% chance of some showers early this morning, and again a risk of a thunderstorm. Windy around noon and a high of 21. Well, next on the show, we have John Curtin with us, director of the G7 Research Group at the University of Toronto. He is the Publier France for the G7 meeting this morning, and he's here to talk to us about what to expect. Good morning.
Hi, Marcy. Good to be with you and your listeners.
Thanks, Bay, for being with us. Yes. So the G7 Leaders Summit, what in your estimation will it ultimately be about this year?
Well, it certainly will ultimately be about and remembered for ending the war between the United States and Iran so we could finally open the Straits of Hormuz and have the oil and the gas and the food and the fertilizer flow out to the benefit of everybody around the world who uses and depends on them. And they've got off to a great start with Donald Trump just announcing yesterday that he had concluded such a peace deal with the Iranians. We're waiting to see what the fine print brings. But it's a big sigh of relief around the world and certainly for all those arriving today to start the summit here in Evian.
What is the Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney hoping to accomplish specifically in this at the G7?
3 things. 1, energy security. 2, clean energy. And 3, new technologies, artificial intelligence, and quantum computing. On energy security, of course, it's opening the Straits of Hormuz, but it's also confronting the big threat from the West, China. Your subsidized exports are killing jobs and communities in Canada, but also the United States and Europe too. So the G7 leaders will try and get their act together to have a coordinated approach to China rather than Xi Jinping pick them off one by one looking for a separate deal. Part of that is reducing the Chinese stranglehold on the supply of critical minerals, rare earths, which gives them enormous leverage, but on which we all depend is a key input for producing the products on which our future depends. Clean energy is interesting. We all agree in the G7 we need to produce more energy at home to protect ourselves against the next Strait of Hormuz shutoff. But Donald Trump doesn't believe in clean energy. Mark Carney certainly does. So we'll have to see if the other leaders can get Trump to go along on things like civilian nuclear energy. Probably they can. But for all of the other renewables, solar, wind, geothermal, it's going to be a tougher haul.
Just last, Trump left last year. The G7 was in Alberta. Of course, he left early. And now, of course, he is saying this morning, of course, the U.S. and Iran have reached a deal to end their war. We have an interview coming up about what we know about this, in some more detail. But he obviously has been outwardly antagonistic toward the G7. They're not even releasing a joint communique, this group, this year. What is the value of this meeting, given the United States' ongoing position on this?
Well, and Donald Trump, of course, he did come to Mark Carney's Kananaskis Summit in Canada, arrived in a good mood, stayed for the whole G7 part of it, actively participated in producing, and agreed fully with every one of the 150 commitments it made. So every reason to believe the other G7 leaders can do it again here in Evian. All of the world's toughest problems, and boy, there's a lot, get kicked upstairs to the top. And everybody knows it's only the most powerful leaders of the world's most powerful democracies that can solve them together, face-to-face, when they gather at G7 summits. That's why in the 52 years, over half a century since they started, all G7 leaders have always come to every G7 summit. No other summit forum or international organization even comes close
to being able to claim that.
Those leaders know that they need their friends to actually together solve these problems
in the world.
And I think the world knows that only the G7 can do that.
John Curtin, thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you.
More analysis on the G7 coming up on World Report. John Curtin's been with us live, director of the G7 Research Group at the University of Toronto. Your news from Manitoba is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it's 15 degrees. Our mid-June Monday in Winnipeg, just slightly cooler than seasonal. A high today of 21. Still windy, north 30, gusting to 50, and still with a chance of showers and a risk of a thunderstorm today. An uncertain summer is reality for many farmers in the Interlake and Swan Valley areas of the province. Fields are flooded, buildings and equipment damaged, and some herds are still isolated after last week's flash floods. Carson Callum is chief executive at Manitoba Beef Producers.
Just hope that those waters start to go down, and that as they're flowing in other directions, we don't see major flood impacts in other areas of the province. And that these producers can get access to their animals again, whether that's being able to access by truck to move them out, or being able to at least bring feed into them in the time being.
Callum says isolated herds can graze grass for now, but feed may eventually have to be flown in. He says farmers are also worried about getting things seeded. Wab Kinew says his government will make disaster financial assistance available to the entire province. Now, only time will tell if 70,000 strawberry plants will grow after sitting in water. Danielle Boonstra says the crop was planted just days before that storm drenched her farm near Stonewall with more than 250 millimeters of rain. And while many fields remain underwater, Boonstra says they are fortunate.
It was nice that a lot of the standing water is in between the rows. They did get a lot of rain, so there was some water on it, but we do have runoff. And we do have a lot of sandy soil here, and we're really high elevation, high ground. So as you can see, a lot of the water is already evaporated, which is a good sign.
Boonstra wants the rain to stop and the temperatures to stay cool while her plants flower and grow berries. She's crossing her fingers that berry pickers will fill her fields by July. Manitoba hospitals will soon start building patient records and storing them digitally. All hospitals will be using the new system by March of 2027, and each hospital can access the information quickly. Dr. Iraj Gambari works at the hospital in Ashern, which is already using this new digital tool. He says he can transfer a patient to another hospital, and the receiving hospital can log into the system and learn a lot about that patient.
In the minute they can open, when we are talking about the patient, they can see my notes, what's going on, what's the lab, everything.
The new system will be limited to emergency department, inpatient units, and urgent care centers. Each patient's file will be created during their first visit, so previous information about their medical history will not be included. To the war in Iran and news, both sides say they have reached an initial agreement to end their fighting. World leaders are reacting. Here is British Prime Minister Keir Starmer.
This is a hugely significant moment. We have long called for de-escalation, and it is vital that all parties seize this opportunity to secure stability in the region and restore freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz.
Prime Minister Mark Carney also going online to express support for this possible ceasefire. He's urging all parties involved to refrain from any further escalation. Carney's one of several leaders endorsing this deal ahead of this week's G7 summit. You can hear the latest on this story coming up on World Report at 7. Winnipeg's mayor and inner circle will consider this week whether to give a grant for upgrades at a soccer field to be home to a pro women's team. If approved, $600,000 would go to help renovate turf and lights at the Ralph Kentafio Soccer Complex if Winnipeg lands a Northern Super League club. Fans of the game like Jennifer Stainer say the city would embrace a potential team.
From our previous experiences with professional soccer, me personally, I've seen the impact in the children that participate and enjoy those games, but because those players become role models, it's where kids start to dream and see a future for themselves.
The city's report for the Executive Policy Committee says the Northern Super League is expected to make a decision on whether to proceed with the new team for 2027 shortly. Well, a former Winnipeg Jet helped lift the Carolina Hurricanes to the Stanley Cup win last night.
Ehlers scores! Nikolai Ehlers! And the party is on!
Nikolai Ehlers, with just a minute left in the third period on Sportsnet, Carolina blanks the Vegas Golden Knight 3-0, winning that series in Game 6. And after the game, it was a choked-up Ehlers with a shout-out to Winnipeg.
I love being in Winnipeg. This was the dream there. I'm obviously sad I wasn't able to do that with the guys in Winnipeg and the city of Winnipeg. They hold a special place in my heart. I've said that. They're family.
Now, Ehlers isn't the only Manitoba connection who is now a Stanley Cup champion. Seth Jarvis, of course, from Winnipeg, and Brandon's Jordan Martinook, who is the alternate captain for Carolina, both on this year's championship team. You can find more on that story as well on our website. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
I feel like we've had a tough year, like with that, right?
We're trying to own everything.
It's like we sent, Hellebuck won a gold medal with the States, and he's a Jet, and Ehlers left, and now he's won the Stanley Cup.
It's like we have the ingredients, just not.
I know, but it kind of makes you feel like, and this is not, I don't mean this as an overarching insult to our team, but you kind of start to feel like we're feeding other teams. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I'm happy for them, though.
I know, I am too, and really nice for him to make some comments even about Winnipeg. That we also would have loved it if he could have won a cup with us here.
Yeah, no kidding.
All right, thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Heather Wells with our latest news from Manitoba. And live from downtown Winnipeg, let's get your weather now for all the regions in our province. Abby's back with the regional look.
Yeah, you look outside, you'd see the cloud cover we have out there, but once that clears off, we should see a mix of sun and clouds, bringing seasonal temperatures across the southern regions. There's a risk of thunderstorms towards the northern regions, as we see on the map here. For Winnipeg right now, we're looking at a mix of sun and clouds on its way. We will see a mix of sun and clouds just a slim chance of showers for this morning. Current temperatures around 15 at the Forks, and we're looking at 12 degrees at the airport this morning. Temperatures will really be hovering between 15 and 13 before we get to a high of 21 today. And if we look at other regions in the south from Morden towards Port La Prairie, we also anticipating a mix of sun and clouds there. Current temperatures around 13 degrees right now. You get some sun, you get some clouds, you get a mix of showers in the mix, and then you get your high of 20 later. Brandon is sitting at 8 and cloudy also at this time, aiming for a high of 20 degrees. There's a good chance of showers coming to the Brandon area. While for Dauphin, currently sitting at 12 degrees, it's clear there, some sunshine cracking through. A good chance of morning showers coming your way later, also warming to 20. While for the Interlake region, we anticipate a mix of sun and clouds there, a slim chance of showers in the mix. Current temperatures around 13, a high of 20 for you today. The Power Flim Flam, we're looking at temperatures hovering around 10 degrees right now. You will see some clouds roll in later in the afternoon. You're seeing sunny conditions at this time. You warm to 18 later. For Norway House and nearby, starting sunny at 7 degrees. There's a good chance of showers also coming your way this afternoon. Highs will be around 16, while for the Thompson and Split Lake area, we're seeing mostly cloudy conditions at 8 degrees. Also a good chance of showers moving in soon. Highs around 12 degrees. And then for Lynn Lake, we're seeing at 7 degrees, sunny conditions. That should fade off, and you see a good chance of showers come your way. Temperatures around, it's going to get to about, let's say 14 later. Gillam is at 5, warming to 12. To Doodle Lake at 4 degrees and cloudy. We're seeing periods of rain in that part of the province. High will only be around 11, while for Churchill, we have mostly cloudy conditions. Rain beginning near the noon period, you only get to 8 degrees. Current temperatures at 3 as mentioned. So it's more like cloudy start across the province, Marcy. Current temperatures in Winnipeg, we're looking at 15, warming to 21 later.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
We were driving back from Clear Lake where we were this weekend, Corey, and it was just the standing water on some of the fields is just, yeah.
Still a problem. I mean, lots of farmers, I'm sure, wondering what do I do now?
I know. So as we heard in the news, but it was, I had to remind myself where the water was supposed to be, because when it's that deep, you look over. I have a picture from 1997 in my house, actually, they've had all these years, and people always think it's a lake, and I say it's a farmer's field.
Yeah. Driving back from Stonewall, even on last Wednesday, I saw whitecaps.
Yeah.
It was windy
did you
too.
really?
Yeah, it was a full-on whitecaps. Looked like a lake.
It's such a strange sight.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hopefully things will improve. Let's get to what's happening in the actual commute.
Yes. The biggest issue still is just a few highways. Still the remnants from that flooding. Highway 10 between Swan River and Minitonas is still closed because of washouts on that highway. As well, in the Interlake, it's hard to know exactly because it hasn't quite updated yet on Manitoba 511, but it looks like there's still maybe an issue on Highway 9. Some localized flooding there heading into the Interlake there up to Winnipeg Beach. Other than that, though, if you do see any other issues going on, if you are on the highways and you see what's going on, I'd love to get an update. Whether you're walking, you're biking, you're driving here in the city as well. Any new potholes, give me a call. That number 204-788-3093.
All right, Corey, thank you.
Thank you.
Corey Funk, you're on 89.3 FM with our team on CBC. Let's go to Crystalie Ramlakan, who's here with our business news. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Marcy.
So let's start with market reaction to the tentative deal on the end of the war in Iran.
Yes, so shares in Europe and Asia skyrocketed this morning after a tentative deal on ending the war and reopening the Strait of Hormuz was announced. Oil prices fell more than $4 a barrel after U.S. President Donald Trump authorized an end to the U.S. naval blockade of Iranian ports as part of the initial deal to be signed on Friday. But, it could take months for oil prices to stabilize after the disruptions from the 15-week war caused them to, of course, surge, pushing up costs for other things like gas and many other products. And so for more on this, here is Heather Exner-Perot, who is the Director of Energy, Natural Resources and Environment at the Macdonald-Laurier Institute.
There's a lack of confidence in the ability to move products there safely. And obviously Saudi Arabia and now United Arab Emirates are taking steps to not rely on the Strait of Hormuz to the same extent ever again. But in terms of getting, that global supply up, very optimistically, it would be, a few months and more pessimistically well into next year.
Yeah, so the energy crisis caused by the war is being called the worst ever, and we are expecting to hear more about the path forward for Canada and the U.S. today. So Canada's ambassador to the U.S. is set to speak today at the Canadian Club in Toronto. Mark Wiseman will have a fireside chat with BMO Financial Group CEO Darryl White, and their discussion comes as that July 1st review deadline looms for the Canada-U.S.-Mexico Agreement on Trade, and the event is expected to discuss the opportunities and challenges shaping the next chapter of cross-border cooperation, trade, and investment.
Let's turn to retail news this morning. You have a story about why some retailers are going big on small stores.
Yes. So when IKEA opens its latest location at a London, Ontario mall this fall, shoppers will find their visits are far from that labyrinth experience most have come to expect. So most IKEAs are at least 300,000 square feet, the equivalent of about 6 football fields, and typically feature 10,000 products. But the one moving into the former Hudson's Bay there will be just 43,000 square feet and sell only 2,700 products. So Uniqlo, No Frills, Best Buy, Sleep Country, and Sephora have all opened small format stores in Canada in recent years. And their hope is that shrinking some of their locations will extend their reach into lucrative markets, where space is often at a premium, but the consumer will to spend is strong. So small stores say this can be a win-win for companies. They let customers explore and get their inspiration, but they also shave down the time it takes to open a new store. Best Buy and Bell Canada teamed up in 2024 to launch 167 small format stores. But you know what, Marcy, it doesn't always work out. IKEA dumped the small format store it opened in a Scarborough mall in Toronto earlier this year, less than 3 years after it was launched, and it attributed the decision to shifting consumer behavior toward online shopping. And the store's limited range of products, which it said resulted in a weaker than expected performance. And another full experience store was just a 15-minute drive away.
Interesting. Finally, before you go this morning, the world seems right now obsessed with protein. Is there enough to go around?
Well, you know, global consumers, they want more protein in every bite, but the worldwide dairy industry is struggling to give it to them. So in the last few years, food companies have added whey protein into everything from Pop-Tarts to potato chips. And market research company Nielsen IQ says the average U.S. market now has more than 38,000 products advertising their protein content, and Canadian supermarkets are likely following that trend too. And the demand has only gone up with the popularity of GLP-1s. So the wide assortment of protein powders and protein-enriched products is causing shortages of the food-grade whey protein and is pushing up prices. And whey protein concentrate is a powdered byproduct of cheese making, and there's only so much cheese production, right? And the hunger for protein is so high, the U.S., for example, has reduced its exports of the commodity. But, you know, the higher prices are likely to drive interest in plant-based protein, and Canada is emerging as a leader in that market.
All right, Crystal, thank you very much for the stories this morning. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Okay, thanks, Marcy.
It's your latest business news on CBC for this Monday morning. Thanks for being here, and stay tuned. More coming up on the deal between U.S. and Iran that has just been announced earlier this morning. So we'll have more coming up in this half hour. Right now, let's go to what they were talking about on CBC nationally across this country on Cross Country Checkup. On Friday, just before Canada's first World Cup match, flag bearers from host nations walked out onto the field at Toronto Stadium. And as the U.S. flag appeared, you might have heard boos ringing out from the crowd. They then quickly were replaced by thunderous cheers as the Canadian flag was being waved. Now, this has followed a trend that started last year after Trump's 51st state rhetoric and tariff threats, when Canadian fans started booing the American anthem at sporting events. This weekend, CBC's Cross Country Checkup asked callers, is it wrong to boo the American national anthem or flag at a major sporting event like World Cup. Here's what some callers shared with host Ian Hannamansing.
I feel it's extremely disrespectful and bad sportsmanship to boo an entire nation based on one person. I live here in the U.S., and I can tell you that not everybody who lives here is representative of the person in power right now. So I'm proud of Canadians for doing what they're doing in terms of supporting locals, supporting Canadians. You know, a lot of people aren't coming here to travel, but like myself, I already have been here since 2022, long before Trump came back into presidency. So I think if we want to look forward to an amicable relationship, this isn't the way to do it.
I honestly think it's freedom of speech. That fool got booed at a hometown crowd at the Knicks game. He can handle being booed, and our flag can handle being booed. And if that's your sentiment, if you feel like booing, you go right ahead and boo. We're kind of aware of being booed on the world stage right now. Yeah. And most of my friends understand it, and we're booing too. If I'm at an event and they play the national anthem, I don't sing. I just can't. You know, there's not a lot to be proud of right now, except for the people that are still fighting.
I guess it was a few months ago that at the Buffalo Sabres game, the woman reciting the Canadian national anthem, the mic cut out, and the whole audience, and this is all in Buffalo, they sang the Canadian national anthem. And I thought, oh my God, that is exactly what it's all about. This is rising above the rest.
I think that there's a third way, which is we should just greet their anthem with silence.
That's interesting.
That instead of cheering or booing when they play the anthem, just don't react at all. Just be quiet. And I think sometimes silence speaks way louder than things like booing.
Those are some of the thoughts callers on Cross Country Checkup on CBC Radio 89.3 FM nationally yesterday, responding to the question, is it wrong to boo the American national anthem or flag at major sporting events like we saw at the World Cup in the opening last week? You can download the whole conversation, by the way, at Checkup Podcast, so cbc.ca/checkup.
On the topics that matter, your voice should be heard.
It looks like this is maybe a one-day blip when farmers across the province need hot and dry.
Radio Noon is where you can voice your take.
In general, it's harder to find a job even if you're educated.
I'm Marjorie Dowhouse. From 12:15 to 1 p.m., Radio Noon opens the phone lines on one important topic.
When I was 5 or 6, my parents gave me seeds and helped me plant them. That was probably close to 70 years ago. And here I am still gardening.
It just brings everyone together. Radio Noon's call-in segment, 204-780-0893. We want to hear from you weekdays on CBC.
It is 10 to 7 right now on your Monday morning, June 15th. Thanks for joining us. I'm Marcy Marcusa with Abby Adeyemi, Corey Funk, and Darren Marash, as well as Heather Wells in our newsroom. Her latest headlines coming up just before 7. It's 15 in Winnipeg, mostly cloudy. Our high today, 21. It's going to be windy near noon, and we have a chance of showers today in the forecast. Well, next, the United States and Iran have reached a deal to end their war, according to U.S. President Donald Trump and Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, whose country has been acting as a mediator. So the precise terms of the peace deal, as you might have already heard this morning, are still unknown. But Trump does say the agreement will include the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. Sharif indicated the ceasefire would cover all fronts, including Lebanon. The deal is supposed to be signed on Friday in Switzerland. Story Hinckley is with us, national political correspondent with the Christian Science Monitor, joining us from Richmond, Virginia to talk about it. Good morning.
Good morning.
So let's start with the Strait of Hormuz, which was already open before the war, and key issues like Iran's nuclear program, which we already are hearing this morning, could be deferred to future negotiations. So from an American perspective, what was accomplished with the conflict?
Well, you're right. The strait has been made open and toll-free, but it was open and toll-free before this whole conflict began. So any analysis or talks about what was accomplished with all of this really will hinge on what comes from the negotiations over any type of nuclear agreement. And again, that's going to be the hard part of all of this. And so, yes, we have the 60-day ceasefire that has been confirmed by the Prime Minister of Pakistan, who has worked as a mediator, as you mentioned, which I think is notable because Trump has claimed dozens of times now that the end of the war was in sight and the deal was around a corner. So that it's being reiterated and reported by so many sides is really important. But I think that the can has been kicked down the road in some ways, in the sense that the hard part is yet to come.
And speaking of that, what do you think the legacy of this war will be?
Well, again, it will kind of hinge on what comes of the nuclear agreement, because that is why Trump says he launched this campaign in the first place. And I think that any agreement that has come to with Iran will be looked at in the context of the agreement that Obama had, that Trump has always railed against and actually undid in 2018. And I think it's also important to note that both sides are going to be coming to this negotiation with what they see as leverage. I mean, the U.S. says Iran has motivation for nuclear talks because they want sanctions relief, they want access to billions in frozen funds that the U.S. holds. But Iran will also recognize that there will be no appetite in the U.S. for the war to resume, especially as Trump and his party get closer and closer to the November midterm elections, where they are facing serious headwinds.
Some people are asking whether or not it was coincidental, although in politics there's rarely coincidences, but that this agreement was announced on Trump's 80th birthday against the spectacle of the UFC fights on the White House lawn. Do you want to weigh in on that?
Sure. I think you're exactly right. The idea that there's rarely coincidences in politics is probably true, especially in this case. The announcement came yesterday, of course, which was Trump's 80th birthday, in which he celebrated with a $60 million UFC cage match on the White House lawn with thousands of attendees. And this is really a community that has been adamant Trump supporters for a long time now. They helped him get reelected in 2024. And this was a celebratory moment that Trump's been looking forward to for a really long time now. So that definitely, this announcement helped the mood. And I'll also note on timing that it's also notable that he left for the G7 summit in France this week. And so the timing of this deal allows him to bring this news to the table.
Mm-hmm. What are you watching for between now and Friday and the proposed signing of this agreement?
I think it'll be really important to watch Israel. They haven't been directly involved in these peace talks, although they are, of course, incredibly integral into this whole ceasefire. There was actually concerns that Israel, Trump had signaled that a peace deal was coming yesterday, but then Israel bombed Hezbollah in Lebanon, and there was a fear that maybe they had just blown up this whole peace deal. But of course, it was announced anyway, and Trump has really railed against Netanyahu in media interviews over the past 24 hours. So it'll be interesting to see if they hold to this ceasefire as well. And then it'll also be interesting to see with the signing of the agreement in Switzerland on Friday, if Trump himself attends. Vice President J.D. Vance said on Fox News last night that he would be there. And it'll be interesting to see if the president will be as well.
All right. Thanks for your time this morning.
Of course.
Analysis there from Story Hinckley, a national political correspondent with the Christian Science Monitor. And as you likely know, World Report's up here at 7 o'clock for more on this story and others. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're locally here with CBC Manitoba's Information Radio on 89.3 FM. Still ahead after 7 o'clock, many churches across the country are underused. Could they be the answer to Canada's housing crisis? That's on our faith column this morning, so stay tuned. Plus, if you've been hiking, trail running, or mountain biking in areas that are still dry in this province, you might be excited to hear about a new network of multi-use trails that's coming to Wasagaming and surrounding communities. So we'll tell you all about that coming up at 7:40. And then later in the hour, just before 8 o'clock, we will get an update from some of the communities most impacted by last week's flash flooding, and we'll hear how the cleanup efforts are going in various parts of the province. So stay tuned. That's all coming up, and Heather will have some of those stories in her news as well, with some specifics about how individuals are doing with things. There was so much there were so many different things affecting different properties, from farms to individuals and basements and businesses. So Heather will have updates in a moment. Just dip into the weather today. 15 right now in Winnipeg, mostly cloudy, partly cloudy in Brandon, 9, Thompson mostly cloudy and 8. Our high in Winnipeg 21, windy around noon, chance of a thunderstorm, and Also in Brandon, you're expecting a chance of showers as well. You have a better chance. You'll see showers, 60% chance today. And then that's the same in Thompson, a good chance of showers coming. Your commute's been fine, 788-3093 if you need to update anything. And now let's go to Heather for those headlines.
Good morning. Well, anxiety among many Manitoba farmers worried about their crops and animals as fields remain flooded. Last week's storms brought torrential rain and flash floods to the Swan Valley and Interlake areas. Manitoba beef producers Carson Callum says some herds are still isolated. He says the Department of Agriculture has been finding those herds by air. So we'll hear the latest on that. He expects to hear an update from the province this week. Excitement is growing about the possibility of Winnipeg landing a professional women's soccer team in the Northern Super League. And this week, the city's Executive Policy Committee is going to consider whether to help fund some upgrades to a soccer complex if Winnipeg does get that team. We'll hear more coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
Ooh. It's an exciting headline for soccer fans, especially right now. All right, thank you.
No kidding. Good timing.
Yeah. Let's talk about national and international news. We've been mentioning it. It is up now in just under a minute. So stay with us here on CBC 89.3 FM for World Report.
Today on The Current.
Rotten fish is what it is. It's just a sour, awful smell.
Fish sauce is a staple in Asian cuisine, but the tiny town of St. Mary's, Newfoundland and Labrador has a long, stinky history with the condiment, even though many people in that province have never even tasted it. A fishy story coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Pakistan's prime minister is calling the deal between the U.S. and Iran a victory for peace and dialogue. In a speech to Parliament, Shahbaz Sharif says, after the dark night of war, the sun of peace has risen. Pakistan has been a key negotiator in the deal. Specific details have not been released, but it is believed the framework extends the ceasefire and leads to the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. There will be significant challenges, including whether Israel will continue its offensive in Lebanon. Crystal Gomansing is in Jerusalem with more on the Israeli reaction.
The Israeli government is avoiding commenting directly on the deal, opting instead to talk about sovereignty and security. Defense Minister Israel Katz issued a statement saying he and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu oppose an IDF withdrawal from Lebanon, saying the IDF will remain in the security zone in Lebanon, Syria and Gaza for an unlimited period, adding the areas will be cleared of residents and all terrorist infrastructure. He says both of them made these points clear yesterday to President Donald Trump and other senior administrators, including Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. Katz in the statement continues by saying they will not compromise on security interests or the protection of citizens, that if Israel is attacked by Iran or one of its proxies, it will retaliate. Israel's National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir says Trump's agreement does not bind the state. In a lengthy ex-post, he says Israel is not subject to the United States and we are an independent and sovereign nation, that Israel's duty is to its citizens. Crystal Gomansing, CBC News, Jerusalem.
In an online post, Prime Minister Mark Carney is expressing his support for a possible ceasefire. Carney will be in France for G7 meetings. He is one of several world leaders endorsing a possible deal. Anna Cunningham has more from London.
Security is tight in Evian-les-Bains in France for the G7. Leaders are assembling here across the waters of Lac de Genève, keen to hear details of this Iran-US deal. European countries have already been responding. Leaders of the United Kingdom, France, Germany and Italy issuing a joint statement late Sunday welcoming the Memorandum of Understanding, describing it as a moment of opportunity, saying they are willing to lift relevant sanctions in response to clear, verifiable steps by Iran on its nuclear programme.
This is a hugely significant moment.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer this morning echoing how important peace is.
It is vital that all parties seize this opportunity to secure stability in the region.
The French President Emmanuel Macron says an international mission established with the UK is ready to support what he says is the urgent and unconditional reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. The EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen is also calling for freedom of navigation to be restored toll-free. Kaja Kallas, the EU's foreign policy chief, says this deal has potential to alleviate pressure on the economy.
Everybody needs the Strait of Hormuz to be open and actually this war to stop.
G7 leaders will be hoping the US president shares more information with them about the deal and does not leave the meeting early, as he did last year in Canada. Anna Cunningham, CBC News, London.
Russia's war in Ukraine will also be a key topic at the G7. Overnight, Ukraine was bombarded by missile and drone attacks. At least 9 people are dead. Officials in Kyiv say Russia hit several apartments and a UNESCO heritage cathedral was also struck. Ukraine's president called that attack a crime against Christian culture. Britain's Prime Minister plans to ban social media for children under the age of 16.
Some technology companies want us to think that social media is unchangeable, part of an almost natural order. But we have to resist that kind of learned helplessness. We have agency. We can change it, and we will.
Keir Starmer did not say which apps would be targeted, but he says his government will also put restrictions on gaming and live streaming platforms. The ban will take effect early next year. Canada announced its social media measures last week. The 29-year-old son of Norway's crown princess has been sentenced to 4 years for raping 2 women.
Tiltalebeslutningene gjelder totalt.
A judge in Oslo read out the court's decision. Marius Borg Hoiby was charged with sexually assaulting the women while they were asleep. He also faced other drug-related crimes for which he previously pleaded guilty. This is the latest scandal for Norway's royal family. Just before the trial began, it was revealed the princess had a 3-year friendship with the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. It is the last week of work for MPs before their summer break, but before they go, they have a bit of house cleaning to do, including the introduction of 2 bills. CBC's parliamentary reporter Janice McGregor joins us from Ottawa. And Janice, it's too late in the sitting for this bill to pass, but what do we know about this latest long-awaited bill?
Marcia, in previous parliaments, the Liberal government has struggled to update Canada's privacy laws, trying to keep up with how personal data is not only collected, but increasingly monetized for profit by digital tech firms. How data is scraped, sorted, and stored without explicit consent not only lacks transparency, but it's difficult to control and penalize if it causes harm. If the Carney government intends to follow through in its commitment to ban surveillance pricing, for example, it can't do that without clearer rules on the retention of consumer data. Last month, when the Federal Privacy Commissioner joined several provincial privacy commissioners to investigate OpenAI's collection and use of Canadians' personal information, a key takeaway was the inadequacy of their current powers. The Privacy Commissioner's office at the moment is mostly an ombudsman with limited powers beyond calling things out, trying to nudge companies into compliance. So we'll see if today's bill mirrors earlier attempts to add more teeth to this watchdog.
The Carney government's fentanyl czar is also providing an update on the illicit drug crisis today. What should we expect there?
This office, remember, was created to mirror, even with its name, the Trump administration's self-styled emergency push to crack down on the cross-border trade in fentanyl. At the time, Canada was trying to avoid tariffs that were imposed anyway, but then struck down by the U.S. Supreme Court for reaching beyond the president's authority. That's not to say, though, that Canada didn't need to do more to fight the devastating effects of opioids. So we'll see what progress officials can report today from their billion-dollar border plan.
Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor in Ottawa. We have new information today that suggests brain injuries in more than half the population is being overlooked. Canadian researchers have found that women are less likely to be admitted to a specialized trauma center than men. CBC's Tashana Reid has the details.
But I remember my head bouncing.
In 2016, Francine Gillis slipped on black ice and hit her head in rural Nova Scotia. She was taken to hospital and diagnosed with a concussion and whiplash, then sent home.
5 days after that, I was nauseated. I couldn't put my head up. Lights were killing me. Sound was killing me.
She was treated for 10 days at a local hospital, but it took 4 months to see a specialist. Now, new research in the Canadian Medical Association Journal says women hospitalized with traumatic brain injury are less likely than men to be admitted to a specialized trauma center. Dr. Natalia Angeloni is co-author of the paper.
So it is consistent and strong enough that we have to actually pay attention to it.
Researchers analyzed the data of 55,000 hospital patients in Ontario with a traumatic brain injury. Overall, women were 26% less likely to be sent to a lead trauma center compared to men. While the research doesn't answer what is driving these differences in access, Toronto trauma surgeon Dr. Najma Ahmed says it's critical for these patients to get the care they require and quickly.
If the diagnosis is not made early and intervention is not provided, then the outcomes can be much worse.
10 years later, Gillis is still dealing with the impacts of her brain injury.
So there's a misconception and a misnomer of its seriousness.
But she's sharing her experience to educate others. Tashana Reid, CBC News, Toronto.
That is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. We are waking up to 14 degrees in Winnipeg right now. The warm spot is Victoria Beach at 16. Thanks for joining us. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Great to be back with you on Information Radio. This is CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. Well, last week at this time, we didn't know what was coming. But of course, Tuesday night into Wednesday changed a lot of people's lives. We're going to get an update this hour after severe rain filled people's homes, washed out streets, also flooded fields and basements and affected entire communities. As Manitoba continues to deal with the effects of the flash flooding, we'll check in with 3 of the most affected municipalities this morning and see how they're beginning this week and what they need. So stay tuned for that. Also, this hour on the show, in areas that are dry, if you like hiking and trail running, you might be excited to hear there's a brand new network of multi-use trails that's coming to Wasagaming and surrounding communities there. We're going to find out about it. Right now, let's go to Heather Welso for more details in our news. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, Manitoba will have electronic patient records shared between hospitals by next spring. That means hospitals will store digital records of your diagnoses, your treatment notes, and other updates rather than using paper records. Some hospitals are already using this system. We're going to hear from one doctor about how it works and what he thinks of the whole thing. Winnipeg's mayor and Inner Circle will consider this week whether to give a grant for upgrades at a soccer field to be home to a pro women's team. If approved, $600,000 would go to help renovate turf and lights at the Ralph Cantafio Soccer Complex. That's if Winnipeg lands a Northern Super League club. We'll hear more about that in our next news coming up at 7:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
Thanks.
Let's get into what's happening in the weather and some more detail than I just gave. Abby.
Good morning. We're anticipating a mix of sun and clouds in the southern parts, along with some mild morning temperatures in contrast to the rainy conditions we're noticing and cooler conditions we're tracking in the northern parts of the province. Here in Winnipeg, we are starting the day mostly cloudy. Current temperatures hovering near 15 degrees. Expect a mix of sun and clouds with a slim chance of showers sometime this morning into the afternoon period. Also coming with a risk of thunderstorms as we climb to a high of 21. Then we'll notice the wind shift. And that's what the situation will be across southern Manitoba this morning. Highs would get to about the 20s. And of course, we'll see temperatures hover in the mid-teens before we get to those daily highs. Close to 20 degrees for most of the regions. Up north, some parts seeing sunny conditions while the rest of the regions mostly cloudy now, tracking cool temperatures and periods of rain. Winnipeg right now, 14. It's cloudy outside with windy conditions arriving around the noon period. We head to a high of 21 later.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey Funk is popped in with a look at what's happening on our commute this morning. Hello.
Yes, quiet here in the city so far, but I will give a heads up to folks who take Logan in the morning. So starting tomorrow on Logan, all the eastbound and westbound lanes, as well as the sidewalks on north and south side of Logan between Vine and Weston Street are going to be closed for street construction until Friday, June 16th, or June 19th, sorry. So from the 16th to the 19th, that section of Logan completely closed. So you're going to want to find another way to get where you need to go. As for right now, city's looking all right, but the highways, keep in mind, still Highway 10 between Swan River, Minnetonka, closed because of that flooding, as well as maybe part of Highway 9 as well, heading into the Interlake. There was some reports on Manitoba 511 at least of some potential flooding there, so just heads up if there's sections of highways there that might be an issue. I'd love to get to updates from folks who might be on those highways. You can give me a call on the CBC commuter line. Let me know what you're seeing, especially if you are in the Interlake area. That number to call, 204-788-3093.
All right, let's start this hour with our faith column. According to the National Trust of Canada, as many as 9,000 churches are at risk of closing, and that's about a third of all faith-owned buildings in this country. Now, this might be a crisis for faith groups, but it's also potentially an opportunity to address a pressing problem in Canada: affordable housing. Now, the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation estimates that Canada needs to build more than 450,000 homes per year over the next decade to meet the demand. It's a startling number, and it's a need that underused church buildings have started to fill in parts of this country. Faith contributor John Longhurst spoke to guest host Julie Buckingham all about this last week.
Good morning.
Why are so many churches at risk of closing? That 9,000 number, very daunting.
Well, there's a few reasons, and the simplest and most obvious is that we're seeing a decline in the number of people attending religious services today. This is especially true for mainline denominations, the United, the Lutheran, the Presbyterian, and Anglican churches. Many of those congregations have fewer than 50 people attending services on Sunday morning, and many and sometimes most of those people are seniors. This results in a lack of resources, both volunteers and finances, money. And many churches in Canada today are just one broken furnace or one roof replacement away from having to close.
How suitable are such spaces for affordable housing?
Well, they do own a lot of valuable real estate, and they have some large buildings in urban centers that can be converted to other uses. And they're often located near transit and other amenities. So they're great locations for things like daycares, senior centers, food banks, music and cultural spaces, community hubs, and so on.
What are the different approaches to converting church space into housing?
Well, in some cases, a church building can be demolished and new housing built in its place. In other cases, part of a church can be converted to housing, and that's what happened in Kitchener. St. Peter's Lutheran Church, they have a downtown location. They demolished their Christian education wing, and they built 41 units of affordable housing in its place. Here in Winnipeg, we have St. Matthew's Anglican, which used its whole sanctuary and converted that into housing. And that also happened at Lutheran Church of the Cross in Arlington, where they have also begun to convert their whole sanctuary into seniors housing.
Do churches have the expertise to redevelop their properties into homes?
No, in most cases they don't. But fortunately, there are some organizations stepping up to help, such as Relevin based in Montreal. Mike Wood Daly is one of their directors, and I spoke to him about this.
We're a secular nonprofit charitable organization that's working with social purpose groups, primarily faith groups, to reimagine their properties for social good. So either through housing or community hubs, maximizing the current use of their space.
So Relevin's goal is to come alongside churches that are in danger of closing and help them realize the potential to serve their communities in new ways, to reimagine new uses for their buildings and their real estate.
Faith communities collectively are large landholders. There's some estimates that would say that collectively faith communities are the second largest landholder in the country behind government. So we've got lots of land, and where we can leverage the assets, the financial value that's embedded in those properties, if we can free that up through developing the land, that helps to create a more sustainable model for congregations and also provides a social good.
So if a congregation decides they'd like to convert their building to new use, they can work with a group like Relevin to deal with municipal governments, to help with rezoning, to put together financing, to create a business plan, to find developers to do the actual construction work.
Do you have an example of a church that's undergoing this kind of conversion?
Yes, as a matter of fact, Peace Lutheran Church in Kelowna, they have a vision to develop housing and a daycare on their property. So they're getting help from an organization called Reframe Concepts. And Lawrence East is a director at Reframe, and I spoke with him recently.
You know, the church is not an expert in housing. They don't want to be property managers. They certainly don't know anything about running a daycare, and so the daycare is going to be operated by the YMCA, and the housing will be run by housing partners. So the church continues on, and Reframe we don't interfere with the inner workings of a church, their theology or their practices or what they're doing. Our job is to serve them and move at the speed of trust. So we never run ahead of them. We always are in lockstep with them. In fact, the way we describe it to them is you take a step first, and then almost immediately we take a step with you.
So Peace Lutheran, like many other churches which are being converted these days, is in an urban setting. And for rural churches, that means it's a little bit harder to convert them to housing and other services due to their locations. But groups like Relevin and Reframe are trying to work with them too to find innovative ways to convert them to other uses.
So what are some of the hurdles for this kind of housing conversion?
Well, as we've heard, expertise is a big one. Churches rarely have the expert knowledge that they need to do this kind of thing. Finances is another big challenge. This includes finding money to conduct the legal, environmental, traffic, community, and many other reviews that are needed in order to do this sort of construction and conversion. And finally, they need courage. They need to be brave enough to step out in faith to explore such an ambitious undertaking.
It's a fascinating idea. In fact, the church that my parents got married in over 60 years ago, and then my husband and I got married in over 30 years ago, is no longer a church in Rapid City, Manitoba. It is a store. It is a home as well. And so perhaps they were a little bit on the leading edge of this. Thanks for doing it.
Thank you. You're welcome.
So that was our faith contributor and columnist, independent columnist, John Longhurst. He was speaking with guest host Julie Buckingham there. If you have an idea for our faith column, by the way, you can always email it to us and we'll get it to John for consideration at radio893@cbc.ca.
Local news is in decline across Canada, and this is bad news for all of us. With less local news, noise, rumors, and misinformation fill the void, and it gets harder to separate truth from fiction. That's why CBC News is putting more journalists in more places across Canada, reporting on the ground from where you live, telling the stories that matter to all of us. Because local news is big news. Choose news, not noise. CBC News.
Remember, we also have a landing page now for stories coming out of Westmount. We have 2 reporters stationed there, Michelle McDougall and Chelsea Kemp. So please check that out on our sites. You can go through community as well and find out about all the other bureaus that we have across Manitoba, including in Steinbach and up in Flin Flon. Just some of the ways we're trying to cover this province. It is 7:21 a.m. on 89.3 FM. And next on the show, speaking of all those locations, this tune is called Hometown. And it's from a Brandon-born musician. Here's Haley. Haley in Hometown. She hails from Brandon. Maybe you do too. Thanks for joining us this morning, everybody. I'm Marcy Marcusa. We're live in downtown Winnipeg, my hometown, and you're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. We got a cloudy sky this morning, wherever you're joining us from, and you hopefully want to bring an umbrella if you didn't forget your umbrella, rather, I should say, if you've already headed out, because we do have a risk of a thunderstorm with us today in Winnipeg again. A 30% chance of showers coming this morning and into the afternoon. Our high is going to be right around 21 degrees, so a little bit cooler than we've had. Next on the show, it is time for morning sports. Lots to talk about with Scott Regehr. Hi, Scott.
Hey there, Marcy.
So hockey, obviously, Carolina has won the Stanley Cup.
It has. The Hurricanes claimed the NHL title last night, Marcy, eliminating Vegas in 6 games, an especially notable achievement for a couple of players. 37-year-old captain Jordan Staal became the oldest winner of the Conn Smythe Trophy as the playoff MVP. And how about the former Winnipeg Jet? Nick Ehlers becomes just the 3rd Dane to win a Stanley Cup, following teammate Freddie Anderson and the former Habs Lars Eller. Ehlers was asked, it was quite emotional, about his decade in Winnipeg.
I love being in Winnipeg. This was the dream there. I'm obviously sad I wasn't able to do that with the guys in Winnipeg and the city of Winnipeg. They hold a special place in my heart. I've said that, their family. And it was a hard decision this summer. I loved my 10 years in Winnipeg, and it was a special time.
Yeah, nice there from Nick
Totally.
Ehlers. He had 18 points in 18 games. He was a serious part of this Hurricanes playoff run. So congratulations to he and the Hurricanes. Quite a weekend when it comes to historic sporting achievements, Marcy. The Knicks won their first NBA title in 53 years on Saturday night. What's next? England winning the World Cup?
I don't know, man. Let's stay on that topic, though. What's the latest from the World Cup?
It is, or was anyway, a very eventful opening weekend, Marcy. The highlight for me, Curacao scoring in their loss to Germany. The Caribbean island is the smallest nation to ever qualify for a World Cup, just 150,000 people. And to see them score against a soccer powerhouse like Germany, a country with more than twice as many inhabitants as Canada, well, that was something to behold. A shame, then, that a hydration break killed Curaçao's momentum yesterday. After the break, the Germans just ran roughshod. For the first time, FIFA is mandating games stop midway through each half to allow players to rehydrate. That might make sense in sweltering heat, but Curaçao's game yesterday was played in a climate-controlled stadium in Houston. Netherlands captain Virgil van Dijk was asked his opinion about the breaks.
I think hydration breaks are a bit interesting. I was obviously watching almost all the games up until today, and every time going to commercial is a bit not really that I like it. And I think for the neutral watchers on TV, it's also not great. If it's really hot, obviously it would be good to put them in, but I think you have to look at it in every game separately, in my opinion. But I think I've said enough already for that.
Yeah. Footy purists I spoke with over the weekend, Marcy, slammed the hydration breaks for killing the flow of matches. I have to say, I agree for the most part. Constantly running clock in soccer is part of the sport's charm. No stopping and starting like we see in other sports. Of course, the likes of the NBA, NHL, and NFL, they raise tons of revenue by running TV ads during their stops in action, and broadcasters at this World Cup will do the same. Commercials netting $1 million US for each 30-second spot.
Well, we'll see what they do with it in the future. To another World Cup controversy before you go, though. This one's a matter of geopolitics.
Right. Iran, Marcy, plays its first match tonight. They'll face New Zealand in L.A. This is the first time a country has played a game in a host nation it is actively at war with. Veteran Iranian striker Mehdi Taremi was asked what his teammates have experienced thus far.
On the first day we arrived, there was a lot of tension in this World Cup. And when there is much tension and confusion, that beautiful phenomenon regarding the peace, calm, and joy a win can bring to a country simply doesn't happen. We, the players, represent all the people of Iran around the world. We are here to unite everyone, and our entire effort is dedicated to making all Iranians happy.
The American government, Marcy, has not allowed the Iranian side to base itself in the States, so they've been training and sleeping at a hotel in Tijuana, Mexico, and then flying in. So they've been dealing with much more than just their coaches' X's and O's in trying to beat the Kiwis today. They will have plenty of support in Los Angeles, which has the largest population of Iranians outside of Iran. Kickoff for that one, 8 o'clock Central Time.
All right, Scott, thank you as always.
You betcha.
That's Scott Regehr with CBC Sports live here on Information Radio from downtown Winnipeg. Stay with us. Still ahead, a new network of trails to hike, bike, or run is coming to Manitoba. We'll tell you where after your news.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it is 14 degrees. It's already the middle of June. We're going to be just slightly cooler than seasonal. A high today of 21. That strong north wind persists today. And again, we have a chance of showers, maybe even a thunderstorm later today. Manitoba will have electronic patient records shared between hospitals by March of 2027. That means hospitals will store digital records of your diagnoses, treatment notes, and other updates digitally instead of on paper. Some hospitals are already using this system. Dr. Iraj Ganbari is the medical lead at the hospital in Ashern. He says he can quickly get digital records from staff at other Manitoba hospitals.
I call the internal medicine in HSC, ask a consult in 2 minutes. He writes the result. I see that what's the plan for the patient. And that's amazing. You know, this is a collaborative work across different departments.
The new system will be limited to emergency departments, inpatient units, and urgent care centers. Each patient's file will only be created during their first visit. That means historical medical information will not be included. Anxiety among many Manitoba farmers worried about their crops and animals as fields are still flooded. Last week's storms brought torrential rain and flash floods to the Swan Valley and Interlake regions of the province. Manitoba Beef Producers Chief Executive Carson Callum says some herds remain isolated. He says the Department of Agriculture has been finding the herds by air.
It was very stressful. Our producers care a lot about their animals, and when they can't get access to them because of floodwaters, it really takes a toll on their mental health.
Callum expects an update from the province this week on numbers and says water levels also need to go down so producers can get to their feed. Wab Kinew says his government will make a disaster financial assistance program available to the entire province, and Callum encourages producers to keep a record of what they've lost. A church in Stonewall is still mopping up after last week's storm. Stonewall United Church's power went out. The sump pump stopped working. 4 inches of water pooled in the basement. Brenda Niebel-Turbot is the church's property committee and says the situation was overwhelming.
It took us about 24 hours to realize because everybody was busy dealing with water in their own basements. So then by the time we got to it, things were pretty soaked.
Church services are canceled until the end of August. Niebel-Turbot says a daycare in the building can no longer run, and she adds while the church is on a tight budget, the community has pulled together to help. You can hear more on these stories coming up in this next half hour right here on Information Radio. The U.S. and Iran confirm they have struck a deal to end the war between the two countries. Fighting will end immediately, and after the agreement is signed, the Strait of Hormuz would reopen. The war in Lebanon is also believed to be part of this deal. Now, overseas markets soared at news of a framework agreement. European and Asian stocks opened higher today. Oil prices fell more than $4 a barrel. The cost of Brent crude fell to just over $83 a barrel. The optimism from analysts is linked to the potential reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. You can hear the latest on this story coming up on World Report at 8. Excitement is growing about the possibility of Winnipeg landing a professional women's soccer team in the Northern Super League. This week, the city's mayor and inner circle will consider whether to help fund some upgrades at the Ralph Cantafio Soccer Complex should Winnipeg get a team. Red River Rising Supporters Association President Jennifer Stainer says this city is a great fit.
We feel hopeful and excited for the prospects. There's a sort of a huge gap for the soccer community right now, and I think they're hungry for it. They're ready to celebrate a new team in Winnipeg.
The league began its expansion process for 2027 in the fall. The league's president has said an announcement about future plans could be made in early summer. Well, they are Stanley Cup champions, and we like to call some of them our own.
1:10 to go. The net is empty. Ehlers scores! Nikolai Ehlers! And the party is on!
Nikolai Ehlers with just a minute left on the clock into an empty net on Sportsnet as the Carolina Hurricanes shut out the Vegas Golden Knights to win the Stanley Cup. After that win, Ehlers choked up a little bit when he was talking about Winnipeg, saying this was something he wished he could have done with the guys in Winnipeg.
I loved my 10 years in Winnipeg, and you know, it was a special time.
Seth Jarvis of Winnipeg and Brandon's Jordan Martinook are both also on this year's championship team. The Hurricanes last won the Cup 20 years ago in 2006. You can find the latest news updated throughout your day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
And Seth Jarvis's local friends are capitalizing on the moment, like since the Olympics, right?
You're no kidding. This has been a big year.
They've got a PR person now. Like they've actually got someone that handles the requests when we try to get them on the air now. So
there is a real movement.
It totally is. I don't know if they're more famous than he is, maybe. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess speaking of all those local connections, so we're going to see that Cup up here to Winnipeg coming back, I'm guessing. So we will see. But Stanley Cup wrapping up last night. 7:36 a.m. You're on CBC Manitoba. Let's get into our regional forecast with Abby Adiyemi.
Yeah, we're starting with cloudy conditions across the regions this morning, Marcy, and there's a slight chance of showers in most of the regions down south, while we're tracking more rain moving into the northern part of the province. For the city right now, we're looking at a mix of sun and clouds. Once this cloudy conditions rolls out, then we have a slim chance of showers into the afternoon period, along with a risk of thunderstorms. Current temperatures hovering around 14 degrees in the city. We warm up to 21 later, and across southern Manitoba, we're looking at 15 around the Morden area, 10 in Brandon, Dauphin is at 13, Gimli is at 14, all seeing a mix of sun and clouds later with a slim chance of showers and thunderstorms in the mix. While up north, we're seeing temperatures between 10 degrees around the Par, and then you go further north towards the Thompson area, we're looking at 2 degrees there, Tudula Lake at 4. Most of the regions, some areas in the north already seeing periods of ongoing rain, and we'll see highs around 11, 14s, and Churchill will only get to 8 degrees later today. Down south, we will just get that break for a mix of sun and clouds, and then some mix of rain in around the noon period. But for Winnipeg, we are looking at a high of 21 today. Current temperature is 14.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Let's get to Corey Funk, who's here to talk about the commute. Hello.
Hello. Yeah, really just a heads up, actually. Not too much going on right now, but tomorrow, if Logan is part of your commute, you might just want to keep an eye out, because all the eastbound and westbound lanes on Logan between Vine and Weston, starting tomorrow until Friday, June 19th, are going to be closed for construction. So you're going to want to find an alternative route. That does include the sidewalk as well. So keep an eye out for that. Other than that, pretty clear here in the city right now. As for the highways, Highway 10 still closed between Swan River and Minnetonka. And actually got an update from Ray Bernier. He says Highway 9 is actually totally fine right now to take. So it looks like things are getting better in terms of your getting in and out of the Interlake this morning. But if you do have updates for me of anything else you're seeing, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
You are listening to CBC's Information Radio on 89.3 FM, 990 AM, or maybe you're watching this morning on YouTube. Well, summer's fast approaching. Of course, next weekend, the 21st, it's officially here. A lot of people, though, have already been outside exploring, and soon Manitobans are going to have a brand new way to do that. Parks Canada is working with the Northgate Trails in Dauphin on a new project. They're going to expand a multi-use trail network. It's going to mean that hikers and bikers and runners using the trails through Riding Mountain National Park and that surrounding rural communities will be more connected. So in addition to Parks Canada, the project is getting the support of the municipality of Dauphin as well as the province. It gave Northgate a $1.5 million grant recently for the project earlier this year. Clayton Swanton is with us to talk about this, president of Northgate Trails. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us on Zoom today. So tell us a little bit about what this expansion of the existing trail system is going to be like.
Yeah, we started the Northgate Trail project, I think, about 10 years ago, and we have 26 kilometers of trail right now that are fantastic, and they're right on the edge of Riding Mountain National Park. And this project is going to allow us to expand into the national park. We're already linked with some of their current trails, but it allows for some future development, and that's the plan, is just to create a much wider network than we currently have, and it more than doubles our size. So it's an exciting opportunity.
You've talked about a concept of trail towns for this project as you're connecting people, using the trails. What's the economic benefit, that's hoped for the different towns, and what do you actually mean by the term?
Yeah, the trail towns is a concept where you kind of build an economic driver around your trails. Just really having some focus on the fact that you have world-class trails in your community or in your region. How do you market that? How do you attract that? How do you work together as various outlying communities? We're very fortunate here in Dauphin, being right along the edge of Riding Mountain National Park, and 45 minutes away you've got Wasagaming, the Clear Lake area, which is a draw in and of itself. So, we're working with lots of partners, Trails Manitoba, Travel Manitoba, City of Dauphin, RM of Harrison Park, and we're all working together to create a concept where you have a bit of a hub and spoke model where Wasagaming can be the hub and people can know that they can go out on these spokes and they can go ride in Minnedosa, they can ride in Dauphin, they can ride in Neepawa, and there's lots of opportunities. So just to make it market ready and create a rural economic driver out of trail.
Are we going to see then maybe some, as this continues to get developed, because you're going from, I think the number is 26 kilometers to 70 kilometers of trail, if this all happens. Are you going to see, do you think, maybe some bed and breakfasts or even hotels pop up in some of those smaller spots?
Yeah, all that stuff, right? People show up if it's a bike specific network, they're showing up with bikes and wallets, right? These groups come up and they need a place to stay, they need a place to eat. They're looking for unique opportunities. A lot of our little communities already have these one-off cute little gift shops or coffee shops. So this will help to expand their user base and hopefully stay alive, have little bike shops, and just have communities start thinking about how they can cater to that. So outside of your bed and breakfast, are you offering bike storage and safe locking and that kind of thing? So these are things that'll have to get worked on over the years, but right now we're just excited that we can have the funds to work with Parks Canada to create a network that allows us to have that second level thinking of, well, if we create this network, what's next, right?
I understand one of the other challenges is that when you follow the trail system in this part of Manitoba, it kind of goes along where the logging trails were, and those logging trails weren't necessarily built to see the most scenic parts of things.
Exactly. Riding Mountain National Park is a fantastic park, but almost all of the trails are utilitarian. They were built for logging roads, and if you just go 300 meters on either side of these roads, there's beautiful views, but nobody gets to see them because the trails have never kind of been adapted for that. So that's what this project does. The Crawford Creek Trail goes up 5 kilometers, kind of winds its way uphill, and then you just come straight back down on it. But it's on a ridge line. Trees are on either side. So the idea is that this Crawford Trail climb will become just a climb trail, and there will be spurs off of it as you get higher and higher. So from you go up 1.5 kilometers and you spur off. It's an easier green loop style ride or hike or run. Go up to 2.5 and it's about a blue or 3.5, and then you can get all the way to the end. And there's a kind of an adventure loop, we would call it, a black style trail along a ridge line that would have you coming back down. And that's the concept. That's what we're exploring with Parks Canada. And at the end of the day, you would have 1,000 feet of elevation drop over 12 kilometers that would link the top of Crawford Creek down to the Sela Ukraina site where Dauphin's Country Fest and Ukrainian Festival are held. So if people have been out here, when they're driving through the park, when you get that vista heading south to north and you get that vista of the flat prairies, the bike trail is essentially on the right-hand side of you along that ridge line, and then you head all the way down to the flat prairie. So pretty exciting stuff.
I just actually came from Clear Lake over the weekend. I had some time off and I was through that area, and it doesn't matter how often I've been up there. It's just it's just a reminder of it's one of the prettiest places in our provinces because of that elevation. You just so many beautiful vistas. Very cool what you're talking about, getting higher and higher and more difficult, and 1,000 feet drop over, I think you said 12K.
Yeah.
You're also working, speaking of biking, I understand, toward an International Mountain Cycling Association designation. What do you need to achieve it, and why is it important?
Yeah, that's the same kind of concept as trail towns, but it just gets you on the map. Once you have these certain designations, then people from outside the area can find you easier. And the IMBA designation, they've changed their concepts over, we looked at this 10 years ago when we first started, what do we need? And at that point, they were silver, gold, bronze level ride centers, and they've changed it a little bit. And they've kind of gone to a ride center, trail town type concept too. So we're at early stages right now of looking into that. And I understand that they're kind of tweaking their model too. But the general idea is you need to have so many kilometers of network, close to amenities, close to an airport, which Brandon is less than 2 hours away. That was one of the criteria before. And so we're going to continue to look at that. And right now, the fact that we've gotten the money from the province, which we're so grateful for, it allows us to start looking at that a lot closer now that we know that this project has a very strong chance of success now.
You got a timeline?
Yeah, well, I mean, in the next couple of years, Parks Canada has started their consultation processes. There's environmental impact to be done and archaeological and all of those. The nice thing about this project is that we've been on their radar for 10 years. It's not like this is coming out of nowhere. We've been working towards this, and it was a funding thing that really allowed us to jumpstart it. So there's been a lot of conversations in the background, and there's still lots of consulting to do and follow the guidelines of Parks Canada. But we're hopeful that by this fall we'll be able to be in there and start making some headway.
Okay, because you're not starting from scratch. Clayton, thank you very much for being with us.
Thanks for your time.
Via Zoom this morning, Clayton Swanton, the president of Northgate Trails.
Local news is in decline across Canada, and this is bad news for all of us. With less local news, noise, rumors, and misinformation fill the void, and it gets harder to separate truth from fiction. That's why CBC News is putting more journalists in more places across Canada, reporting on the ground from where you live, telling the stories that matter to all of us. Because local news is big news. Choose news, not noise. CBC News.
Coming up on CBC here after 8 o'clock, since his parents fell in love on a bus and he was a regular transit user, a Winnipegger said it was sort of a no-brainer to say yes to writing a song about the need for better transit in Winnipeg. Here's a snippet of his tune.
Avenue Jimikana, 50-50 funding for a friendly Manitoba.
That is former Weaker Thans frontman John Sampson Fellows writing that song about the Winnipeg transit system. He says he's doing it for a good cause, so we're going to find out more about that cause, who approached him, and we'll hear more of the tune as well. That's all coming up after 8 o'clock live here in our CBC studio. It is 13 minutes to 8 on 89.3 FM, and it is 14 degrees in Winnipeg, mostly cloudy, 30% chance of showers and risk of a thunderstorm this afternoon. Unfortunately, because obviously we're still trying to settle out from last week's flash flooding. Now, speaking of which, everyone had all kinds of different trouble. So many people, I should say, all across Manitoba. From flooded basements to washed out highways, a lot of people still feeling the impact of last week's extreme weather and will be for weeks and maybe, unfortunately, months. Today, we're going to go to leaders right now next from some of the communities hardest hit. So first, let's head over to the municipality of Swan Valley West. The town of Swan River received 55 millimeters of rain last Sunday and 22 more millimeters the day after. Then the flash flooding started. It washed out highways, cut the community of Minitonas off from the rest of the province. About 150 people forced from their homes there. So Bill Gade is with us, Reeve of Swan Valley West, to tell us what's going on this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
So what's the biggest cleanup work that is needed this week? When you're looking at this, it's Monday morning. What are the biggest needs?
We have two things on the go. So for the more rural area, we're still building roads. We've got many crews out there building roads, trying to make sure we get the roads put back in place. For the most part, we've gotten to almost every house now. The big deal now is to get to all the farmland. We have a lot of farmers that need to go farming and make some money. The second part of that is the residential areas. We still have a lot of houses that are in trouble. For the most part, the water's out, but we're stripping basements right now. So getting everything out, getting the drywall out, kind of in a race against time, against mold, trying to make sure the mold doesn't take hold of the homes and make things even worse.
So when you say you have a lot of houses in trouble, are you talking about the mold situation?
Yeah, it's the mold problem right now. The floodwater's finally gone. We got rid of that late last week, and now it's just about getting those houses to a point where they're not going to become more unsafe than they already are.
What are you hearing about the situation in Swan River specifically when it comes to the needs, and then Minitonas?
Certainly in Swan River, we're seeing much the same thing in that south part of Swan River where there's some flooding. There's some people that got water in their basements. That's all being stripped out. We're hoping to have the landfill open either today or tomorrow. And part of what we're seeing in Swan Valley West and Swan River is we have mounds of debris now on all the streets, but we haven't been able to get to the landfill to put that someplace where it needs to be. We're hoping to do that hopefully today. If not today, it'll be tomorrow. We'll finally have access back to the landfill so we can start hauling that debris away. I was in Minitonas on Saturday just to look, and it is so much worse. And I don't want to downplay Swan Valley West and Swan River. We have a lot of troubles, and we have some people that are hurting really bad. But in Minitonas, you have the entire community is feeling that. It's just crazy how much higher the water was there. But I was out there, and the people are doing really well. They're working on rebuilding. There's some charities in town there that have been helping with some of that cleanup, and certainly with some mold control. Those charities are making their way over into the Swan River and Swan Valley West this morning to help us out too.
You talked about infrastructure by way of, the landfill and trying to figure out how to get that up and running. What are the other biggest concerns with infrastructure in any of the communities?
The highways were certainly a big one. We've fixed some of those up, but we still have Highway 10 closed. The detour there is adding an hour of transit time to a lot of people's route. So that needs to get fixed up. We've got a couple other little roads that are really important. We need to get going. And then there's the secondary roads that may only serve 10 or 15 people or 10 or 15 farmers, but we need all of those. So that, for us, is the big thing with the roads. We do have some bridges washed out. Though I will say, and you should try this someday, we were out for a helicopter tour on Thursday. We landed on one of the bridges. The only way to get to it was by helicopter.
Wow.
Just to take a look at it. And that was kind of cool.
Yeah, no kidding. I've been in the air over a flood, but not in a helicopter before, and certainly not landing on a bridge. What would you like people to know about insurance? The province says it will make disaster financial insurance available. I'm guessing you're getting a lot of questions about it.
Tons of questions, and we just don't have answers. We know what the DFA rules are for disaster financial assistance, and basically they say if you had insurance or if you could get insurance, you're not covered by disaster financial assistance. And so we've got a ton of people who, when they bought their insurance, they said, hey, do you want overland flooding? And they said, no, I don't. I'm never going to need that. Well, the DFA rules say they don't get anything. The Premier has said that's not the case, that he's going to make sure no one's left behind. But we're kind of left in a gap right now where we don't know what that looks like, because here's the rules the province told us versus what he said to everybody else. And we're kind of stuck in the middle with everybody saying, well, why aren't you honoring what he said? And that's not what the rules say.
And just to be clear here, Reeve, I'm wondering about how many people are still out. I mean, people are still cleaning. So is most of Minnesota still out? There were 150 people forced from their homes because of the water, but I'm just trying to get a sense of where people are at right now.
I think that 150 number is probably just a best guess.
Okay.
In Minnesota, certainly most people are in their homes, whether they should be or not, because there's not a lot of other places to go to.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was there on the weekend, there's people in homes that are still full of mud and still full of molding items, and that's why there's that big push to get it out, to get those homes safe for habitation for them. Swan Valley West is much the same. We've got lots of people staying with friends and family, but they go spend the day at the house cleaning, and then they maybe go sleep someplace else.
Well, put on the hip waders as you visit the farmers today, as you said, and thank you very much for your time this morning on CBC.
Thank you.
That is Bill Gade, who's the Reeve of Swan Valley West. Now let's talk about Take You, 500 kilometers southeast, where the story is not all that much different in the arm of Rosser. They declared a state of emergency last Wednesday. No more than 20 people were evacuated, and officials are confident they did get everyone out, but then they left flooded homes and fields behind in the region that is just northwest of Winnipeg. So Ken Mulligan is the Reeve of the arm of Rosser. He's here next to talk about his area. Good morning.
Yes, good morning. We were inundated with this rain Tuesday night. It started raining approximately 8, 9 o'clock at night, and it came in waves. So the rain basically affected our whole RM, some parts worse than others. The power was out for between 18 and 22 hours. There was some lucky people that had power maybe restored within 2 hours. They probably had lesser effects, of course. The town of Grossall is what got hit the worst. We had one bay there that had approximately 15 houses affected. We had to evacuate these people. We had a boat in there for some of the elderly and younger ones, moving them out. So the majority of the damage, of course, is basement flooding, but it's the same thing throughout the RM. Of course, without power, how quick it came up, people are running for generators. Gas was one of the biggest things. People had generators, and whether they had enough gas or they didn't have any. And of course, in the middle of the night, there was no gas stations open. So there's lots of things that happened during this storm event.
Yeah. So I just want to ask you, Reeve Mulligan, if I can interject here this morning. I'm trying to update the numbers for us, as we start a new week, to see what the needs are where you are. So to be clear then, how many people are still out of their homes in Grosse Isle right now? And what is your biggest need this morning?
Okay, so right now I would say that we maybe have 15 people out of their houses right now. They were allowed to go back in as long as they had an emergency plan should it come up again. I think I understand the previous person talking about mold. That's my concern as well. We're monitoring all that constantly. But there's some of them that are back in their homes. They had possibly only 2 feet of water in their basement. The ones that had more, most of them are off their property.
Okay. So we were hearing from our last guest, of course, around Swan Valley West, about visiting farmer fields to get a sense of things and different aid agencies being, in community, making donations. Are those some of the, do you need those things in Rosser?
So the people are great, as they are everywhere. The people are great. They jumped in right away. We had volunteers coming out right away. We were putting people up in a community club. It wasn't long before there was people there. We had no power still. There was people there with generators and food and whatnot. So we've been lucky. We were able to house all these people, whether it be relatives or wherever, very quickly. So in our case, no, we don't. We weren't in need of that. And helping to clean out and whatever has been fantastic. We have community that has been jumped to the gun and helping out all the residents.
And just in our last moments here, do you have infrastructure needs in your area, or what would you like to say that people should know about the Arm of Rosser?
So the Arm of Rosser right now is caught in between RMs, and our proximity is right beside the city. So the city is where Assiniboia or the Assiniboia River is. We have a large basin creek, which is Sturgeon Creek, 240 square miles, that is flooded right now. And it has to make its way through the city to the Assiniboia, and they can't do that. There's a small hole in a track bed that it has to go through to get to the city, which we totally understand. It keeps the flooding away from the city, but we're sitting on a pile of water, and this water probably won't go down for at least 2 or 3 weeks. So that's our biggest struggle. It's taking out 20 roads, a minimum of 20 roads. It just keeps moving further and further towards the city, and so it's affected a few other houses on its way as well.
All right. Well, thank you very much for this. Obviously, we'll get more information from you throughout the day to find out more about that specific need. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Ken Mulligan, Reeve of the Arm of Rosser. Now, after 8 o'clock, just because our time is short here, Sandra Smith will join us, the mayor of Stonewall. As you know, they got 255 millimeters of rain in that town last week in this system. Also, after 8 o'clock, we're going to be talking about some of the concerns people have with transit and funding for transit in Winnipeg. Stay with us. Right now, it is coming up to 8. It is 14 degrees. For the very latest in news stories developing in our community, please go to our website at cbc.ca/Manitoba. Heather Wells this morning with news about Manitoba hospitals who will soon start building patient records with digital storage.
Today on Q. Imagine it's the 1880s. You're sneaking into an insane asylum and you realize a lot of people there aren't insane at all. That's what the journalist Nellie Bly did. The Canadian playwright Hannah Moscovich will tell you why Nellie Bly did that and why it's the perfect story for an opera.
Like where you can really get into someone's mind.
Q with Tom Power. This morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland. And on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
Fish sauce is a staple in Asian cuisine, but the tiny town of St. Mary's, Newfoundland and Labrador has a long, stinky history with the condiment, even though many people in that province have never even tasted it. A fishy story coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. We start with news of a possible Iran-U.S. peace deal. The framework sets out a way forward to end their war and the global energy crisis. Details are sparse and do not go much beyond the broad brushstrokes. The CBC's Katie Nicholson is in Washington. And Katie, just what do we know about the deal?
So unverified details have been leaking out about what this covers, both from the Iranian and U.S. officials, but both sides seem to agree that this memorandum of understanding spells out the immediate cessation of military engagement, the end of the U.S. naval blockade of Iranian ports, and when signed, the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. president insisting last night the strait would reopen toll-free. But Pakistan, when it announced this deal being struck last night, was clear there was a week of technical talks ahead before this is supposed to be signed on Friday in Switzerland. And as we have seen, agreements made during this conflict are complicated and fragile. And it appears some of the more thorny issues, like the future of Iran's nuclear program and the lifting of Iranian sanctions and access to frozen funds, will be kicked down the road a little as this agreement creates a 60-day negotiation period for those and other contentious issues. And Trump has told the New York Times if they fail to make a deal on the nuclear issue, he would resume military action. So a lot of uncertainty really still lingering today.
Part of this hinges presumably on Israel and Hezbollah. What do we know about what they're saying?
Well, Israel was reportedly caught off guard by some of this last night, and it says it's not going to be pulling its troops from Lebanon. Its national security minister, who leans to the far right, has insisted the agreement doesn't require Israel to cease hostilities with Hezbollah in Lebanon, and we know that has been a red line for Iran from the very early days of this war and the negotiation of the first ceasefire agreement. So Israel and Hezbollah have essentially ignored the U.S. president's demands in the past that they stop firing on each other just throughout this conflict. And any provocations on either side could further threaten to topple this deal before it gets signed on Friday.
Thanks, Katie.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Katie Nicholson in Washington. TSX futures climbed 0.8% on the news of a framework agreement, while the cost of Brent crude fell to just nearly $83 a barrel. Analysts tie the optimism to a potential reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. However, experts caution it may be months before prices stabilize. CBC News is in Tehran. We are reporting from there with permission of the government. Iran imposes restrictions on international journalists. However, they do not check our material before it's published or broadcast. Senior international correspondent Margaret Evans spoke with people in the capital. She has some of what they have been saying from Tehran.
There are going to be many people who are very relieved to hear there is what may be called an official end to the war. And about the promise of economic relief, we met people in the Grand Bazaar here yesterday who talked about the changes they've had to make, even in terms of their diet, not being able to afford to buy meat anymore because of the economy here. But there is also a lot of skepticism. There are many people who don't believe that the deal will hold, in part because of the Israeli Prime Minister's comment saying that Israel is not a part of this agreement and will not be withdrawing from Lebanon. And young people in particular seem quite dejected about the prospects for real change and real progress in Iran, especially after those January protests we saw, those huge uprisings before the war against the government demanding change, were put down so violently by security forces. Margaret Evans, CBC News, Tehran.
Prime Minister Mark Carney has expressed support for a ceasefire. He's on his way to the G7 with news of a possible peace deal expected to dominate the summit. Kate McKenna is with the Prime Minister, and she has more.
Canada very much welcomes this progress. We'll have an opportunity starting from tonight at the G7 in Evian to see what we and other countries can do to help reinforce this important progress that's been made, and also from a broader regional perspective, including in Lebanon and beyond.
Prime Minister Mark Carney commenting on the U.S.-Iran peace deal, saying Canada remains in close contact with allies and is ready to support efforts to bring lasting peace to the Middle East. In a joint statement issued with Germany, France, Italy, and the UK, Canada said it's vital the detailed negotiations are concluded rapidly and comprehensively. It also called for the urgent reopening of the Strait of Hormuz with unconditional and unrestricted freedom to navigate. The countries committed to playing their part in achieving this, while also committing to working with the U.S. to make sure Iran never gets nuclear weapons, saying they're prepared to lift relevant sanctions in response to steps by Iran on its nuclear program. Carney is now en route to Evian-les-Bains, France for the G7. Sources say he hopes to have a bilateral meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump while he's there, though at this point it's not clear whether that will happen. Kate McKenna, CBC News, County Mayo, Ireland.
Despite news of a potential agreement, there is political friction between the U.S. and Iran is about to reach a different type of playing field. Iran's men's soccer team is about to play their first match of this World Cup, and the game is in Los Angeles. Lindsay Duncombe is in L.A. with the details.
Inside the Saffron and Rose ice cream shop in the Westwood neighborhood of Los Angeles, Atabak Yousefzadeh says he will be cheering for the country he fled 50 years ago.
I love my country. I'm rooting for my country and my team.
This part of LA is known as Tarangelis. It's estimated more than 200,000 Iranian Americans live in and around the city. Many left after the Islamic Revolution in 1979. Soccer is huge in Iran, and loyalties are divided. Salma Musa studies sports and politics at UCLA.
The question is just whether you see yourself in the national team or whether you see the government.
Los Angeles has been home to many large anti-regime protests since the war began. Protesters will be outside and maybe even inside the stadium tonight. Ali Khorsand will be one of them.
People of Iran, they don't have a voice, so we are in here to be their voice, to demonstrate to the world that this regime is a terrorist regime.
Concerns about visas meant the Iranian team moved its base camp from Tucson, Arizona to Tijuana, Mexico. The players will be allowed to enter the U.S. the day before each match. Lindsay Duncombe, CBC News, Los Angeles.
Canada's MPs are about to rise for the summer, but not before introducing two bills. The Carney government has given notice they will bring forward a long-promised update to Canada's privacy laws. It is expected to include protections for children's data. Another bill will address clean drinking water on First Nations communities. Canada has brought in its first batch of electric vehicles from China. They are part of a recent trade deal between the two nations. As Lisa Xing explains, Beijing may be looking to expand the market even further to solve production problems at home.
There's just so much competition within China.
Ilaria Mazzucco is with the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington, D.C. She says domestic EV sales in China are stagnating. The intense competition is driving down automakers' profit margins, consumer demand is slowing, and government subsidies and trade-in incentives are shrinking.
They need to have that growth market, and the only way to find that rapid growth market is to go abroad.
While domestic sales declined by about 25% in the first quarter of 2026 compared with the same period last year, export data shows there has been a major increase in Chinese EVs going to countries around the world. Sales doubled in Europe and jumped by 130% in Southeast Asia.
There's no way stopping the development.
Auto analyst Lei Xing spent 20 years covering the Chinese car industry in Beijing and says that industry has matured and exports are now the next logical business step.
More profitable business, there's more demand. The credibility of Chinese products, EVs, are there.
There are now more than 2,900 Chinese-made EVs in Canada, the majority of which are reportedly Teslas produced in Shanghai. More Chinese-branded autos will come too, as governments like Canada's are grappling with protecting domestic car industries and accepting an era of Chinese EV dominance. Lisa Xing, CBC News, Toronto.
That is the latest national and international news from World Report. One of the most read stories at cbcnews.ca. Why Canadians say soccer and not football. The answer on our main page. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We're live in downtown Winnipeg in Studio 15 here on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. Cloudy start to the day here in Winnipeg, and I think any cloudy day with a possibility of rain is going to stress people out after last week. Wow. In Stonewall, so much rain fell. We are going to talk to the mayor of that community to hear how they're doing this morning. Over the weekend, a lot of folks coming together there, including some businesses to offer free things to community as they continued with cleanup. Stonewall last week, as you likely have know by now, received 255 millimeters of rain on that interlake town. So we'll talk to the mayor coming up. Also this half hour on the program, let's talk about transit. Maybe you're listening and you're on the bus this morning. There was a time when the province shared 50% of public transit costs with municipalities. A group of Manitobans wants to see that return, and they have some advocacy going on right now. We're going to hear from them coming up. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells. She's here with other headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, Manitoba is going to have electronic patient records shared between hospitals by March of 2027. That means hospitals are going to store digital records of your diagnoses, your treatment notes, and other updates instead of paper records. Now, some hospitals are already using this system. We'll hear how it's being received coming up. And excitement is growing about the possibility of Winnipeg landing a professional women's soccer team in the Northern Super League. This week, the city's mayor and inner circle will consider whether to help fund some upgrades at a soccer complex should Winnipeg get a team. Those stories and more coming up at 8:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
Thanks.
Let's get into today's weather with Abby.
It's a damp start across the province to the week. Mild conditions in the south meeting cooler rain system pushing through the north. Here in Winnipeg, currently 16 degrees, mostly cloudy outside. Some sprinkle of showers we're noticing out there. Expect our high to get to 21 today with potential afternoon showers or thunderstorms. And that's the story for most of the southern regions, reaching 20 degrees, while up north much cooler. Wet conditions there. We're seeing 2 degrees in the Churchill area and about 13 around the Power Flin-Flon. We'll see daytime highs close to 18 with steady rain moving into the region. But Winnipeg, right now, it's 16 heading to 21.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey.
There is an outage around the Main Street area, North Main Street area, that is causing some intersections to be out. So those intersections right now, Main and Redwood, Main and Mountain, Main and Cathedral, all out right now. So treat that as a four-way stop. Those are out due to a power outage. Not sure at this point when that'll be restored, but as you can imagine, some big backups around there. Other than that, though, if you do see anything else going on, if you're walking your bike and you're driving, you can give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
Well, this morning we're checking in with some of the hardest hit areas in Manitoba after last week's flash flooding. Before 8 o'clock, if you were with us, you heard our conversation with Reeve Bill Gade in Swan Valley West about the community of Minitonas, about the town of Swan River. He said that he's going out to check on farm fields today. Over the weekend, they were out continuing to talk to people about emergency assistance, and he said Minitonas just was so hard hit. So they're continuing to see what's going to be happening. There were about 150 people forced from their homes. We also heard before 8 o'clock on the program from another community. We talked to Ken Mulligan, who's the Reeve of the Arm of Rosser. Now, the concern there was a lot of people in Grosse Isle. There were about 15 people, he says, who are still evacuated from their homes, and they're watching right now a nearby creek and its association to the Assiniboine River. As if river levels rise and the creek backs up more, that could also be an issue that they're fighting there. When it comes to rainfall, next on the show, let's take us to Stonewall to have an update this Monday morning, because last week in those storms in the RM of Stonewall, the town of Stonewall, 255 millimeters of rain fell in that interlake area. And that's more rain than any other southern Manitoba community got. So Sandra Smith is the mayor of Stonewall. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
So how are things looking in Stonewall this Monday compared to last Wednesday when this all, unfolded?
Things are looking better. We still have, a lot of cleanup to do. A lot of residents were hit pretty hard with the flooding. So lots of cleanup for residents. Our infrastructure is all operational, still working. Lots of water that we had to, the drainage was working, but obviously very slow. We actually got hit with a bit of a situation on late Friday afternoon, which kind of put us in for a bit of a workout. We had a situation where we were going to possibly have some homes on the west side of Stonewall flood, and so it was all hands on deck, and we found ourselves doing a lot of sandbagging around those homes in that area. It was quite amazing to see the community come together in such a short amount of time to secure the homes. And so far, so good. No one has been flooded out, and we've been monitoring that area of town for the last few days.
And was that just additional rain coming Friday afternoon that caused that?
It was actually. So we drain into the Grassmere Creek, and unfortunately, a lot of other RMs do as well. So we found. There was some heavy winds on Friday, and it started to rain again. So winds had shifted, and it pushed a lot of rain and water very fast into an area where there was some drainage happening that we weren't aware of, and it was pretty intense. So a little scary, definitely for sure for those homes, but seems to be under control right now.
There's been obviously a lot of flooded basements in your town. What have you heard about people's experiences with insurance or accessing the provincial disaster financial assistance? Because this is really not something you expect to happen in Stonewall. Maybe nowhere, but especially Stonewall's kind of, you drive in, it's a pretty dry town. You're kind of almost, I think, on some elevation there.
We actually are the same height as the Golden Boy. So no, this totally... the amount of rain that we got in such a short amount of time was unprecedented. What we're finding right now, a lot of our residents are discovering that they didn't have the insurance coverage that they thought they had. So it's really heartbreaking to see, the struggles that they're having with the insurance. There are so many claims that have been made over the last few days that unfortunately there's a bit of a wait for people to get their adjusters out. And so they're very unsettled with what they might be covered for and what they might not be covered for. You mentioned the DFA, so we have been in constant contact with the province about this, and we did have the Premier out here on last Thursday, where he did indicate that no one would be left behind. I think one of your earlier guests had mentioned that as well. We have heard that the province will be coming to Stonewall and perhaps some other communities in our area to set up to help people with DFA. We don't have those details yet, but we've been keeping our residents as informed as we can when we have the information. So we have a Voyant alert system, so our residents are signed up for that, hopefully, most of them. And those updates go out. We've had several updates over the last few days. Also, we're putting all that information on our social media pages and our website as well. And we encourage our residents to go to our media outlets, our channels for communication and for accurate information.
Yeah, you need those the local papers and stations and all the ones that are right there on the ground for you, right in community. Yeah. Speaking of which, when you think about small towns, like Stonewall, it's kind of, you can be in an everyone knows everyone situation. You can also be in a situation where you have some people that have lived their entire lives in a community. What's it like for you as mayor watching people, you alluded to this a little, but come together to help and really try to, especially with such damage in so many homes?
I think for myself and for our council and for our entire town, it's so it's heartwarming. It's heartwarming. We've had such an amazing display of community, everyone coming together, and residents checking on their neighbors, businesses stepping up and offering support. We have two companies that are offering services for picking up flood-related items, drop-off spots. We've had some amazing church groups, some surrounding How to Write colonies that came in to help us out on the Friday night. A rapid relief team here in town that have been delivering, I'm going to call them little care packages when they're going around looking at, if there's, flood damage related items in front of their homes. They're dropping off packages of, some goodies, some treats that they can, kind of enjoy. We had a restaurant here, Sig's Grill, on Saturday that offered free soup and sandwiches to residents that needed a break. So it's really home hardware, big block. I mean, I don't want to start naming a bunch and forget anybody, but it has been overwhelming, the outpouring of support and love. And everyone's just kind of wrapping their arms around everybody here and just, offering what they can. It really shows you what a town is made of when things like this happen. And I'm so proud to be the mayor of this town.
Sandra Smith, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you very much.
That is the mayor of Stonewall, Sandra Smith, with us on CBC, and of course ongoing coverage throughout this week as that cleanup will continue. And some of the areas, of course, still being assessed for damages, especially Farmers Field and such across Manitoba. It is 8:21 a.m. on 89.3 FM. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Well, next on the show, if you're in the city of Winnipeg, maybe you're listening on the bus this morning. So we are about to hear a song that has been written by a man whose parents fell in love on a bus, and he himself has been a lifelong rider. So when he was approached to write a song about the challenges with the transit system in our city, there was no hesitation. So we're about to talk to John Sampson Fellows about his song. But first, let's have a quick listen. It's a 2-minute tune. This is called 50/50 Transit.
Tap the new transit app, open to show who we are now and where we need to go. From Arlington to Avenue Jimikana, 50/50 funding for a friendly Manitoba. Regional driver, deliver us home, where Cocoons and Aves are living alone. From Thompson to Selkirk, from Flin Flon to the Paw, 50/50 funding for a friendly Manitoba. More buses, more routes, more accessible to everyone. More buses, more routes, more accessible to everyone. More buses, more routes, more accessible to everyone. 50/50 funding for a greener, for a fairer. We need 50/50 funding for a friendly Manitoba.
It's probably the prettiest plea for funding you're ever going to hear, right? Clip of a song called, I got the title slightly wrong, 50/50 Funding. It is by John Sampson Fellows, who's in studio. Good morning. John wrote this in collaboration with Climate Action Team Manitoba. As you heard, it calls for restoration of funding. The province used to split transit cost 50/50 with 5 municipalities: Winnipeg, Brandon, Thompson, Selkirk, Flin Flon. The Pallister government ended that model and froze transit funding in 2017. It's not been restored under that agreement. So let's talk more about the campaign. Laura Cameron's also here, Director of Programs and Strategy for Climate Action Team Manitoba. Good morning.
Thanks for having us.
And John, I think your mic's popped on now, so I'll say good morning again. Hi.
Good morning, Marcy.
So tell me a little bit about your involvement with this and why you right away, John said, I'll help out and write a little tune with this campaign. You've got some personal feelings about transit.
I do. Well, I take transit almost every day, and I'm a big fan. And the Climate Action Team folks approached and asked if I would like to write a song for their campaign. And I said, yeah, absolutely. So I spoke with the Climate Action Team and asked what they would like the song to be about, and then wrote the song and sent it off to my friend Rusty Robot, who is working with the after-school leaders here in the Broadway neighborhood, which is a group of kids who get together and after school and get to make videos and music. And they sang on the song.
That's their voices.
Yeah, that's their voices, which really make it for me, I think. Yeah.
And is it right that your parents met on a bus? Like you've got this personal little touch?
I know. They met on a bus on Ellis Avenue. My mom was going to United College, which is now the University of Winnipeg. My dad was going to law school, which used to be above the law courts. And that's the first time they met. So
I kind of love that.
I know, me too.
Did they just see each other? Did they start chatting?
I'm not sure. They've never really. I'll grill them on it later today.
You just know they met on a bus. Yeah. Let's get to the serious part of the message in this song. You, Laura, are calling for a 50/50 funding to be restored. Why?
Yeah, so the 50/50 funding agreement was created actually back in the 1970s in Manitoba, and it's been in place for the better part of the last 5 decades until it was ended in 2017. And this is just a really important agreement for the province to match municipal investment, as you said. So it shares the investment in transit between 50% with the province and 50% with the municipalities, and that's just a really fair way, I think, of distributing the costs and making sure that we have a strong transit system. It also incentivizes municipalities to invest because those dollars are matched by the province.
Before 2017, then, when we had 50/50 funding, was the system that much better? Like, how do you know that you're attributing that to the funding?
Well, we know that, the share that the province is covering of transit funding has decreased a lot since then, relatively. And actually, in Manitoba municipalities like Winnipeg and Brandon, we have some of the lowest per capita spending on transit operations in the country compared to similar cities. Like, for instance, Edmonton spends 50% more on their transit operations. Cities like Montreal and Ottawa spend 200% more on transit operations per capita. So in Winnipeg, we've really fallen behind. And, I think that gap has only widened in the last 10 years. And so we really need more transit funding to improve service for everyone. Transit is a fundamental service for getting to healthcare appointments, school, work, groceries, and so on. And we can't let it, keep sliding.
You ride the bus all the time, John. Do you think that, do you see a difference 2017 and then afterwards?
That's a good question. I think I do. I think my buses are more crowded. They're less frequent. And I feel like there should be more of them. There should be more drivers, and it should be more affordable and accessible. So I do feel that way.
We have statements that I want to read out here. So the city and the province said this to us about this. So a spokesperson for the mayor's office said in an email, quote, the mayor would welcome any additional funding support for transit from other levels of government. Since the 50/50 funding agreement ended in 2017, the portion of the transit budget funded through the city property taxes has increased by more than 120%, from 55 million to 122 million. Despite those financial pressures, the overall budget for transit has reached record highs each of the past 4 years, unquote. I know this is a lot of info, listeners, but we're going to get somewhere. Let's hear from the province now. So Minister of Municipal Relations, Glenn Simard, we have this statement, quote, we've increased support for municipalities year over year. We know how strong communities depend on reliable, stable, and predictable funding increases. So our 2026 budget included making transit free for kids, which will not only as an investment in transit across Manitoba, it helps families with the cost of living while encouraging more people to use public transit, end quote. So I guess my question is, if the city says they're spending more because the agreement ended, the province says, hey, hang on, maybe no 50/50, but the kids are riding free. How do you see those things making a positive difference in transit, or why do you say great but not enough?
Yeah, so I think, the free transit we saw for youth this year from the province is a great first step. We hope to see that implemented. They've made that announcement. They haven't actually, youth are not yet riding the bus for free. So we really want to see that implemented over the summer. But the 50/50 agreement would really increase funding available for operations across the board. So the free transit for youth provides more access for youth, but it doesn't improve service for all riders. And so what we need to see is improved service. We need to see more buses. As John said, we see them overcrowded. We see not enough buses. There's not enough frequency on those high frequency routes in Winnipeg, for example. And there's lots of gaps in the network when we look at the province generally. So I think that bringing that operating spending back up is, where we need to go.
How worried are you that let's say the province said, okay, we're doing it. We're restoring 50/50 funding. And then the city says, great, we're going to take now what we were paying for funding before 2017. Now that we got that agreement again, we're going to lessen the increased investment that we put in.
Yeah, that's a great question. And we have sort of made our demand such that the province would match a new investment in public transit, for example, starting January 1st, 2027, so that the city municipalities cannot, backtrack on their own investment. That's sort of what we're looking for, to match new investment, and that incentivizes them. We also see, like with the youth free transit, that the province does have the ability to sort of put, some strings attached, some conditions, and incentivize or direct the municipality and transit agencies to move in certain directions.
Just last briefly, I want to ask, we did do a story about transit revenue and ridership numbers being down in Winnipeg, at least. So some people are choosing not to ride the bus. Is it a priority for everyone, do you think, to have that much more money put in?
Yeah, great question. I think investing more in transit has, benefits both for transit riders, making service better, but also for drivers because it reduces congestion, it reduces pollution, and it reduces our emissions, bringing down greenhouse gas emissions to ensure that, we don't keep contributing to these summers of flooding and fires is essential. And I think passenger transportation is a huge piece of that in Manitoba, and we need to get serious about sort of tackling it.
Appreciate both of you being in and also sharing the music with us this morning. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having us.
That's John Sampson, fellow singer-songwriter, Laura Cameron, Director of Climate Action Team Manitoba. Next, your CBC News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 8:31. It is 16 degrees, a mix of sun and clouds today. Again, we have a chance of showers with a risk of a thunderstorm. It's going to be windy, a high of 21. Manitoba hospitals will soon start building patient records and storing them digitally. All hospitals will be using the system by March of 2027, and each hospital can access the information quickly. Dr. Iraj Ganbari works at the hospital in Aschurn, which is already using this new digital tool. He says he can transfer a patient to another hospital, and the receiving hospital can log into the system and learn a lot about that patient.
In the minute they can open, when we are talking about the patient, they can see my notes, what's going on, what's the lab, everything.
The new system will be limited to emergency department, inpatient units, and urgent care centers. Each patient's file will be created during their first visit, so previous information about their medical history won't be included. Anxiety among many Manitoba farmers worried their crops and animals as fields remain flooded. Last week's storms brought torrential rain and flash floods to the Swan Valley and Interlake areas. Manitoba Beef Producers Chief Executive Carson Callum says some herds are still isolated. He says the Department of Agriculture has been finding the herds by air.
It was very stressful. Our producers care a lot about their animals, and when they can't get access to them because of floodwaters, it really takes a toll on their mental health.
Callum expects an update from the province this week on numbers and says water levels also need to go down so producers can access their feed. Now, only time will tell if the 70,000 strawberry plants are going to grow after sitting underwater. That from Danielle Boonstra, who says her crop was planted just before a storm drenched her field near Stonewall. While many fields are underwater, Boonstra says they are fortunate.
It was nice that a lot of the standing water is in between the rows. They did get a lot of rain, so there was some water on it, but we do have runoff. And we do have a lot of sandy soil here, and we're really high elevation, high ground. So as you can see, a lot of the water is already evaporated, which is a good sign.
Boonstra wants the rain to stop and the temperatures to stay cool while her plants flower and grow berries. Well, the U.S. and Iran confirm they have struck a deal to end the war between the two countries. Fighting will end immediately, and after this agreement is signed, the Strait of Hormuz will reopen. The war in Lebanon is also believed to be part of this deal. Canada's MPs are about to rise for the summer, but not before introducing two bills. The Carney government's given notice it will bring forward a long-promised update to Canada's privacy laws, expected to include protections for children's data. Another bill will address clean drinking water on First Nations communities. Winnipeg's mayor and Inner Circle will consider this week whether to give a grant for upgrades at a soccer field to be home to a pro women's team. If approved, $600,000 would go to helping renovate turf and lights at the Ralph Cantafio Soccer Complex if Winnipeg lands a Northern Super League club. Fans of the game like Jennifer Stainer say this city would embrace a potential team.
From our previous experiences with professional soccer, me personally, I've seen the impact in the children that participate and enjoy those games, but because those players become role models, it's where kids start to dream and see a future for themselves.
CBC News has reached out to the league for more information. A former Winnipeg Jet helped to lift the Carolina Hurricanes to the Stanley Cup Championship last night.
1:10 to go. The net is empty. Ehlers scores! Nikolai Ehlers! And the party is on!
Nikolai Ehlers with just a minute left in the third period there on Sportsnet. Carolina blanks the Vegas Golden Knights 3-0 after winning that series in Game 6. And after the game, it was a bit of a choked up Ehlers with a shout out to Winnipeg.
I love being in Winnipeg. This was the dream there. I'm obviously sad I wasn't able to do that with the guys in Winnipeg and the city of Winnipeg. They hold a special place in my heart. I've said that. They're family.
Ehlers isn't the only Manitoba connection who is now a Stanley Cup champ. Seth Jarvis, of course, of Winnipeg, and Brandon's Jordan Martinook are both on this year's championship team. You can find more news updated throughout the day. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thanks, Heather.
Thanks.
Big thanks to Heather Wells from our news department, as well as Megan Ketcherson and Joni Nicolo. And our Studio 15 team, Corey Funk, as well as Abby Adiyemi and Darren Marash, our producers, Anelli Gonzalez and Leif Larson. And right now, let's go to Corey to find out more about the commute.
Lights out right now on Main Street at the intersections of Main and Redwood, Main and Mountain, and Main and Cathedral. Totally out right now due to a hydro outage. Got a call from Danielle. Says backups are not too bad. People are taking their turns.
All right. Thanks to contributor John Longhurst for an item on the show this morning, as well as associate producer Marshall Hodgins, Sophia Peralta-Brone, and Emily Enns, associate producers, that is. So big thanks to everybody. And a last look at our weather now with Abby.
The sun is already cracking through, Marcy. We're going to see temperatures reaching 21 for the southern regions. Current temperatures hovers between 12 and 14. Up north, we'll see highs close to 18 degrees in that part of the province.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Take care. Be well, everyone, across Manitoba. I know it's another big cleanup day for a lot of folks in those flooded areas, so take it easy with that. And remember, our provincial-wide noon call-in begins at 12:15 this afternoon if you can join us. The Current is coming up next. I'm Marcy Marcusa.